What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream. Let me flip on our little tickers here at the bottom and let's get rocking. So first of all, I hope you guys didn't get thrown off too bad by daylight savings time. I hate it. It's my least favorite time of year, especially in the spring, because you lose an entire hour of your life. So yeah, that being said, we're back live again, and me flying solo again. So Rick was not able to make it out this week, which we'll see what happens. He had a good time last week. He said he may join us for a couple more here in the future, so we'll coax him back into it. He was having a good time. So we got BFD Fire, BVFD Fire. What's going on? Thanks for joining, man. Appreciate you being here. I have no idea what exactly you're talking about with the spread. We're gonna zoom just a little bit here and close in just a hair. Tighten that up just a little bit. Get a little more intimate to the camera. So how are you guys doing this evening? This really wasn't an eventful week for me at all. I've got a job potentially coming up down in Ohio that will probably break here. I think I'm going to try to go down there next weekend, possibly. So there is a possibility we will not have a live stream next week. So stay posted on that. But I might be down in Ohio actually running a hoe for a guy that I met through the whole YouTube thing. And so we may not have a live stream next week. So stay posted on that. Outside of that, let's see here. I did go on a job with Rick the other day. Actually, it was the Monday following the live stream last week. He had a tree clearing, land clearing job, which was kind of nice considering we had just talked about all of that. And so I do have some footage coming down the pipeline for you guys on that. Probably next week I'll have a couple videos that drop maybe the week after. I'm kind of juggling things around with my existing footage and what I'm working in. So we should have some good stuff coming down the pipe now that the work season is slowly beginning to fire up. So Nick, what's going off, man? Nice. He's got him. Sorry, I should say what's going on, but then I was reading your comment that you got a pink Whitney in my honor. I appreciate that, brother, but I am actually drinking. So now that we've started this whole let's drink on the live stream tradition, I have brought out one of my favorites, which is Monkey Shoulder. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. It's a blended scotch, and for a blended scotch, it is freaking fantastic. So for you, Nick, since you're already firing up, I'm gonna fire up with you. This is the one thing with this mic stand, you never know whether to go over or under. So we're just gonna pour a couple fingers here because you know, for good luck that we go long tonight. Let's have a good live stream here. So to you guys. And look at Manny. Manny's jumping right in with the questions. Manny, so I work for myself now, doing only the channel. I started as a non-union contractor, and then when I flipped over to Dan's Excavating, I went into the union, and I was in the union for just under 5 years before I ended up leaving. I don't want to say the industry because clearly I'm still in the industry, but before I left the operating side where I was a full-time operator. So I have played both sides of that. Alan, what's going on? Hope you guys are all good over there in Chicago. I'm sure that you guys are getting a cold pop like we are here in Michigan. I know, Nick. So that was I didn't used to be a heavy booze drinker. I used to just be like a craft brew guy. And then I unfortunately made the mistake of getting hooked on scotch. And it is expensive. In fact, I was talking about it with the guy up here at the liquor store where I get this from is actually a scotch guy himself. And so we go back and forth quite a bit when I'm in there talking about different scotches. And he was talking about some of the, like Johnny Walker Blue Labels, like $225 a bottle, but it's spectacular. I've never tried it. I have tried the Belvini, I think 18 year, which I think is like a $180 bottle. No, I did not pay $180 for it. My dad got me a little sample pack for Christmas one year, so we all sat around and shared the little shooter. And it was, I will say this about scotches, like I've been a red wine drinker my whole life because of my parents. They're really big into red wines, and the way red wines work is they get significantly better up until you hit about the $30 to $40 a bottle range, and then it just kind of tapers off and you don't get that much more flavor out of it. Like the flavor profile doesn't change, it's more of like how smooth the wine is. I will say 100% with Scotch, that is not the case. Whew, excuse me, it's already hitting. The more expensive the Scotch, yeah, the more flavor, the smoother, the richer. Like, oh my gosh, that 18-year-old Belvini was fantastic. So, Stella, Alan, I'm all about Stella. It's hard to beat Stella. It's a good drink. So, BVFD Fire. I'm just going to call you Fire because that's easier. I appreciate the compliment. I appreciate you found the channel. And more than anything, I appreciate that you subscribed. I say it over and over again, and it's 100% true. This is only possible because of you guys. This is my full-time gig. I don't do anything else at the moment other than kind of freelance operate in order to get footage for the channel. So I really do appreciate you guys subscribing to the channel. So Chad, learning GPS, that's a hard one, man. I don't know if you're in the union. If you're in the union, you can absolutely go to the training center. They do GPS classes. Unfortunately, they're few and far between and they fill up really quick, so you've got to really be on it. That's probably your best option if you're in the union. Outside of that, it's really find a contractor that's willing to work with you and then offer to stay late and dink around in the machine and then ask questions of other operators that are already running the GPS machines. That's about your best way to learn GPS. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, guys, I'm hoping, and Nick, you can call me out on this, there might be something in the works in the background with Case Construction, hopefully, that I can get my hands on a dozer and GPS equipment. We will see. No promises. It's still very much in the early stages of any sort of discussion, but that is something that I have been working on in the background, and I have gotten some news in recent days that I might be closer to that than I thought. So stay posted, but if I can get my hands on it, believe you me, Chad, GPS is like one of my top things that I'm trying to make some videos on, because I do know there's a really large demand for that content, because no one really has, you know, how to load files into the system, how to actually read the layout on the screen, how to, you know, do undercuts or fills. And so I would really like to walk you guys through that. So just all I can say is stay posted. At this point in time, just stay posted. So Manny, I hear you. If it wasn't for the fact that I have this job now where I get to wake up tomorrow and edit videos instead of go work on a machine at 5:30 in the morning, I would be drinking Capri Sun too. In fact, Capri Sun might be a little strong for me because of the sugar hangover in the morning. You know, I might stick to a light seltzer, you know, something very manly. So, Nick, I'm with you. I'm thinking winter is finally done here in Michigan. Traditionally, we would get one more pop of snow, but I don't know. This year feels different. I don't know about you guys, but this year just feels different. Like, it feels like spring is here. It feels like winter broke. This has been kind of a weird year, so we'll see what happens. Nick, Corona and Heineken, for real, dude. Like, first, all right, we're gonna back this. I wish I had like a screeching brakes sound effect for right in this moment. So you get me to drink Pink Whitney, which, as I showed in that live stream, is the most feminine drink I've ever had in my life. And now you're telling me that your fallback is Corona and Heineken, which are like the skunkiest, like nastiest beers you can possibly. Come down here to Michigan, Nick, and I will show you a good beer, like a quality beer that you'll come away from it and you won't be like, well, that was all right and it got me intoxicated. No, I'm gonna show you a beer that you're gonna be like, I want to drink the snot out of this beer. So at one point in time, Nick, you and I are going to have to go visit a bar together, and I'm going to have to give you some lessons on quality drinking, not quantity, quality. Rick, what's going on? So Rick's in the chat, guys, from last week. Rick Valco there. That's my buddy. We're going to have some mulching videos coming up here. Manny, good question. Hardest learning curve. In all honesty, I would say from a physical operating the machine, the dozer by far. The dozer is one of the most difficult machines to learn how to grade, just because it's all in your ass and it just takes seat time, and learning how to anticipate what your tracks are doing and how that's going to impact the blade, and then seeing what the blade's going to do, knowing that you're on a lag as it gets to the tracks. And you know, it's a difficult machine to run. Now, that being said, when it comes to the steepest learning curve of getting your ass chewed and there's so much going on and you're not sure what to do with yourself, I would say absolutely loader. It's so many people. I just posted a video for heavy metal learning on loader tips and tricks. It's kind of a what not to do in a loader, or top 5 rookie mistakes. And I actually talk about this in that video, that loader is one of those that everyone way underestimates. Everyone jumps in the seat of a loader and they're like, oh, it's a boom in a bucket. Like, how hard can it be? Loaders are one of the more complicated machines on the job, just because of the workload that you have and what you're responsible for. And then at the same time, it's also, there's a lot more technique to keeping that bucket nice and level and getting a full scoop and being efficient and productive. Like, that's, people way underestimate the difficulty of a loader. So I would say that. Oh, Chad. So yeah, Shanahan Brothers out there in Nebraska, that was an awesome job site. My folks are possibly in the process of moving, so unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to make it back out there to get some completed shots of that job. I was really hoping that I would get out there sometime in early summer to see the folks again and maybe get some like wrap up footage of that job, you know, as it finalizes. But they may not be in Nebraska anymore, so unfortunately I don't know if I'm gonna get back out there to that one. So so Anthony, when you say testing, where are you at that you're required to have any testing? Are you getting into the union, or what do you have going on that you're waiting on COVID? I will say this, COVID has been so miserable on so many fronts, and it has impacted so many people in so many different ways. Like, how else can you say it other than just the broad generalization that COVID sucks? I know one of the areas that's been affected on the equipment side is machine production. You know, Case released the DL550, the Minotaur that everyone was super excited about. And this was supposed to be the year that they came out and really launched this thing full bore. And due to COVID and some other things that have come down the pipeline, like, everything's been pushed back. So companies are dropping projects, or they've been pushed. Like, COVID's just been such a pain in the ass. So Nick, that's a good point. I will give you that. When I was 20, we were sitting around a card table in my cheap ass rental while I was going to school, playing Texas Hold'em, drinking Natty Light. So I will 100%, I will give you that. I'm still going to give you some crap about it, but I will concede that point. Holy crap, you guys, 15 inches of snow. Thank you for converting that over to freedom units, by the way. Manny, 100%. I actually talk about that in my loader video. I've talked about it multiple times in other videos where I'm running a loader. Man, guys that don't use traction control, that is one of the biggest indicators you've never been in a loader, or you don't know what you're doing. Because in all honesty, I had a bunch of experienced guys getting in loaders on the job, and watching them spin those tires trying to get into a pile. And the most frustrating thing was, a lot of times it was my loader, like that was my baby. I always ran it with the traction control on. They would get into the loader and turn the traction control off on purpose. And it's like, well, you're an idiot. Like, that's all I could say. Like, I was just sitting there like, really? Like, you don't know what you're doing if you're spinning your tires getting into a pile. 100%. Wheel spin is just tearing up the machine. It's costing your employer money, and it's making you look kind of dumb. So gotcha. So study civil engineering. I wouldn't panic too hard, Anthony, about studying the civil engineering, like, other than the basics. You know, it's not like you're going for an engineering course. If you're getting into the union, it's going to be relatively basic stuff about road building, I would think. But yeah, that's awesome. If you can get into the union, dude, that's great. That's awesome. Super exciting stuff. So, Fire, the crawler loader, I'm assuming you're talking about a track loader. I don't know if you were around for the Kentucky trip here. It's been 3 weeks or so now. I was going to go run one of those for the first time in my career, and I was super excited. I love track loaders. And unfortunately, that trip completely imploded. Never made it out to do it. So that's awesome that you're getting seat time on the loader. That's the track loader. That's great. So game 5 plays going into the construction equipment operation in Norway. First of all, I'd love to come visit you. Man, Norway is so beautiful. It's cold as shiitake mushrooms, but man, is it pretty. 3 to 4 days a week on site for 2 years. So game, this is the one difficulty about being overseas, not familiar with your country at all. I have no idea what your earning potential is in other areas. I will say this, like over here in the States, it's not 3 to 4 days for 2 years. Like you would start off the go at 6-7 days a week. You would just be either an apprentice or you would start on the end of a shovel. So I mean, if it's going to significantly impact your earning potential going to that particular school, I would say possibly look into an avenue of getting into the industry that would allow you to kind of work out the gate. But at the same time, I'm not familiar with your country, and if that's pretty typical, yeah, 100% go for it. I mean, heavy equipment running heavy equipment is an absolute blast, and if you've got I will say the being on site 3 to 4 days a week, if it is a school, is pretty significant. You don't get that as much over here in the States. Typically, you're just at the school and you don't actually get to go on site with any real site work. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could be a pretty decent program. So Paris, I'm just going to call you Paris because you got a hyphenated last name, and I don't know, it feels a little weird calling you Paris Holloway Gilbert. So we're going with Paris. I appreciate you actually watching the Q&A, man, because I'd look kind of dumb sitting here talking to myself in an empty room. Like you guys see this as my little backdrop and everything, but I'm actually sitting in the middle of a room talking to a camera in the middle of the room. So I look kind of dumb. So I appreciate you guys showing up here. So, dude, that's awesome. I will say, if you don't want to go to heavy equipment school, actually, let me read your second thing where you actually say what your question is. My question is, while I still have my security clearance, try to get on machine company. That's a good question, because I honestly don't know anything about the government contracting side. I will say this, a lot of your government work is contracted out to outside companies, and you don't have to have any sort of a clearance for that, or if you do have to have any sort of special clearance, that will be granted to you when you get on that job. A prime example is I did airport work. This was post 9/11, so security was super tight. We were actually brought in before our work year here in Michigan generally starts second week of April when the weather breaks. And so we had to have security clearances to actually go onto the airfield. And so they brought us in like the 1st of March, maybe late February even, brought us into the airport, had us take all of our security clearance classes, and we were able to get all of our certifications to go behind the fence. So that should all be provided to you. I don't think your military security clearance is going to be a make or break deal there. I will say this, coming out of the military fresh, dude, you're going to be a fantastic candidate for anyone to hire. So my personal take is, instead of spending 9 months paying or using your GI Bill to go to a heavy equipment school, I would say go try to get a job right off the bat and have them pay you, and you'll learn on the job. That is the quickest, most efficient way to learn. It's going to be way more thorough of an education of anything that you're going to get through a school. So that would be my advice, is try to go that route if you can. But if not, if you want to, I mean, you've just been in the military, so if you want to go hang out and chill out for 9 months, by all means, go hit the school on the government's bill. I mean, you got your GI Bill. And if you don't have any plans for that, like your kids can't use it, or if, I don't know what your situation is with your spouse, whether she could use it, you know, if you're not going to go that avenue with it, then yeah, go hang out in the school for 9 months. So. Oh, let's see here. And see, this is my problem when I get on these tangents, Fire, is I don't know what your question was referring to with the tires. Oh, we're talking about the loader. That's what it is. We're talking about the loader. Yes, 100%. The operators that spin the tires clearly have not paid the bill for the tire. I had a couple tires that needed replacing just because they were worn out, and I talked to the tire guy. I was running a WA320, which is roughly the size of a Cat 938. So you're not even on the bigger, like it's a mid-size loader. You're not even on the bigger end of the spectrum. And those tires were, I think, $7,000 a piece. So yes, they clearly have not ever paid for a tire. Manny, 100% there. Grade setting would be a great classroom course. Like, go into the classroom, spend half a day to a day in the classroom, and then go spend a day just checking grades, setting slopes, you know, calculating slopes. That would be one of the only settings I would say go spend some time in a class taking a true class. Anthony, if you're in the union, that's the beauty of the union, brother. It's not hard to get your crane certification at all. So the process there is you would let the union know that you're interested. Your union should have a training center somewhere with some cranes, and they will start training you. And the process you go through is you literally spend time in the seat of the crane. You will take hoisting. So you actually take some hoisting and rigging classes, because part of what a lot of people don't understand, let me kind of back up here. Excuse me, scotch. We're good. What a lot of people don't understand on the crane side is at the end of the day, when that crane lifts something off of the ground, when you do a pick, you, the operator, are responsible. And it doesn't matter how sophisticated the rigging was. The second it leaves the ground, you are responsible for that pick. And so that being said, one of the things that you will want to do, and God, Lord, I can't think tonight. One of the things the union will offer are rigging courses. And so I would highly recommend you start by taking a couple rigging courses. That will kind of introduce you to the concept of running the crane and what the crane operator is doing while you're rigging things and how you need to think about the balancing of loads. Then you'll actually move into your crane courses, and you'll actually take your own time going up to the training center running some cranes. Then you start at the same time, you're taking your crane courses, which actually goes through, you know, how to calculate radiuses and how to calculate your max lift and everything at different radiuses. And when you go to set up the crane, you need to be able to calculate before you even put your outriggers down. You need to be able to calculate exactly where that crane needs to go so that you're able to reach everything for your pick. So that's kind of the general process. And then what happens is you go take a federal written exam, which oftentimes the union will provide for you. I can't remember the cost. I want to say it's like $200 or less. And I think the union, if I remember right, the union would cover part of that. I want to say it was going to cost me like $100 to get my CCO. Once you have that piece of paper, you are officially a certified crane operator. Now, manage expectations. Obviously, no one's going to take a fresh CCO operator and throw them in a 250-ton crawler crane somewhere on a wind farm. You will start probably on some smaller machines. It might not be a bad decision to actually start as an oiler for somebody. And then you'll just kind of slowly work your way up the food chain as you would on the dirt side. So that's kind of how you get into cranes. It sounds a lot scarier than it is. It's a pretty straightforward process. And if you are in the union, it's a heck of a lot easier, and you've got a lot more doorways open to you. So if you're thinking about getting into the hoisting side of it, I would highly push you that way, because they need operators bad and they pay good money for it. So let's see here. Oh, Massey Ferguson stepping up to a 977 Cat. Yeah, this is actually what spurred my whole possible visit to Kentucky. Was we were debating whether it was faster to dig basements with an excavator or a track hoe. The guys down in the south swear up and down it's a track hoe. Personally, I don't see how that's going to dig faster than an excavator when it comes to a basement application. I could see if you're just hogging material and you're not digging a hole, excuse me, I could see where that's true. But man, when you have to go into a hole, grab your bucket, spin around, or back out of your ramp and come out of the hole, I just don't understand how that's a more efficient process. So what's up, James? Welcome to the chat, buddy. How are things finally settling down up there in Canada? We were talking with Nick. He said he thinks winter's done. How about with you guys up there? Joey from Kentucky. Man, I'm getting a lot of Kentucky guys. This is like the third guy this week from Kentucky I've talked to. Joey, thanks for joining in, brother. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming in. So Komatsu 360, that's a good machine. I've run a fair amount of. I've spent a fair amount of hours in a 360. Those are solid machines. Oh, let's see here. Like to add, I have 1 year of what's called TIP, Technology Industrial Production, and then something called. Gotcha. Then 2 years of all on site. So yeah, game. I see. That's the weird thing too, is you guys over in Europe do things totally different than we do over here in the States. Over here in the States, this is like a. I mean, really, we call it skilled trades over here because it is a trade. You literally go from high school or whatever stage of life you're in, you just show up on a job one day, you get hired, and you kind of learn it on the fly, on the job. I know things over there in Europe, you guys, like your operators generally tend to, you do have schooling, and it is more of a, it's almost like a college education that you get to go do the skill, which I think is incredibly awesome that you guys do that. You guys have really technical operators over there, which is awesome. You don't see that as much over here in the States. As much as we love to toot our horns over here in the States, I can honestly say I bet most European operators, if you were to put them head-to-head with an American operator, would probably out-operate them. And that's not to knock American operators by any means. You guys just take everything to another level over there in Europe. Not to mention you guys have all the crazy attachments, and we just don't deal with those over here in the States. So it's kind of a lack of education over here on the States side. So honestly, I'm not familiar enough with your programs to give you an honest opinion of what you should do. But at the same time, if you've kind of taken a look at the landscape around you, and this is a good option, and it's not going to put you way behind if you were to take another career path, I would highly encourage you to get into the industry. It's fun, and if nothing else, this is a fun industry. So good luck over there in Norway, and maybe one of these days I will make it over there to see you and see the Northern Lights, because that is on my bucket list. Oh yeah, James, big money to be a crane operator. Honestly, if I were to do it over again, knowing what I know now, I would have started my career going into hoisting, spent a couple years oiling for somebody, and then moving up into the big crawler cranes, just because there is so much stinking money in that side of the business. So, hey, there you go, James. No snow for a week. That's where I'm at. We actually jumped up into the 60s. I don't know what that is in Canada units. That's freedom units, but we had sunshine. It was 60s. Unfortunately, we're back in the 40s for 3 or 4 days here, but then we're supposed to pop back up into the 50s. So I'm quite excited because it's really looking like winter is finally done. Oh, so game, I just saw that. Free for you to do it. That's awesome. To be able to do all of that for free for what, a 3-year education? That's awesome. I would 100% tell you do that. So, oh, Nick, so you guys have frost laws up there too. Yep, we've got the frost laws on down here. And it's probably going to be another 2 or 3, I don't know, Rick. You tell me. Rick's in here too. What, 2 or 3 weeks probably on the frost laws before they start popping off? I'm not sure when they'll start coming off, but we've already got guys staging equipment all over the state, so. Can you simulate sitting in your chair? I'm assuming that's supposed to be chair, Rick. What it's like to run a loader on a pipe crew. What you're thinking in the objects you encounter. So, if you're wanting the experience in my chair, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but the experience of running a loader is doing this all freaking day long. You're cruising around at 30 miles an hour with pipe on the end of your forks, and you're trying to take a drink out of your thermos while you're doing this all day. And then you're trying to talk on the phone because you've got at least 2 phone calls waiting on you because your laborer down here needs more sand. The foreman wants to know how much pea stone is left on the ground, and your hoe operator's wondering where your next structure is. So, like, there is running loader for a pipe crew in a nutshell. And it's that from 7 a.m. to when that machine stops at 6:30, 7:30 at night, whenever you guys decide to shut down. That is running a loader for a pipe crew in a nutshell. Nick, 100%. Watching those guys, I can't even remember whose channel it was. It might have been Danish Construction Channel. He's really good, but one of those guys the other night I was watching, he was swinging. He had that, it's hard, can't do it with the mic boom here. He had that bucket swung all the way sideways, and as he was sweeping across with it, he was angling just like perfect timing to where he was making this perfect finish pass with the bucket at an angle sideways to the machine. And the whole time I was just like, oh my God, that guy's such an amazing operator. Like, none of that's automatic. Like, he didn't have grade control running on it. It was all his inputs on the controls. And everyone who's not familiar with those rototilt buckets, it's not like you have roller switches where you can smoothly do it. You're literally popping buttons and making that thing move and really jerky. This guy was so freaking smooth on those controls. It was unreal. So I'm totally there with you, Nick. Those operators over there are just amazing what they can do with those buckets. Yeah, Rick, I'm with you. Excavators will dig circles around a track loader. You put a good operator in an excavator, put a good operator in a track loader, have them dig the same basement side by side. I would almost put money on the fact that the excavator is going to finish first, and it's going to do a better job because you're not rutting up the bottom of the hole. Like, it's a nice, clean, virgin dig. You haven't rutted it all up with the tracks. So... And there's Nick with his little case comments. Jesus, come on, man. Actually, no, I did not run a case loader while I was running for a pipe crew. I started in the WA320 Komatsu, which has a similar problem as the case. It just wasn't quite as ass heavy. And then I got in that 938, and good Lord, that was a sweet loader. With the exception of that stupid hydrostat transmission, I love that 938. That was such a blast to run. It had balls. That thing would power through. I noticed the first time I really noticed how much ass it had. I can't even remember the size of the trench box. It was a mama trench box, and they held traffic both ways on the road we were working on. And I went and stabbed into the side of that trench box, and I was able to keep the ass just on the ground. But that 320, I had tried it back a couple weeks before, and the 320 wouldn't even touch it. Like, as soon as you put any pressure on it, ass would come off the ground. But that 938 handled it like a champ. That was such a great loader, and I really put it through its paces. So yeah, Rick, I gave you the seat bounce. You got it. AP, what's going on, brother? How's life over there in England? See, I'm with you guys, Fire. So with the track, now the big advantage, and this is what was explained to me, the big advantage that the track loader has over the excavator is if you need to move that material further away from the hole, you have the ability to do it with a track loader. Okay, I can see that. If you need to do any grading while you're there, the track loader is going to be a lot more efficient at doing the grading, not having to bring in a second machine. So I can see some of the arguments. Really, I just see the track loader being efficient. I honestly don't know why you don't see more track loaders on pipe crews around here. I think part of the reason is because we do so much existing road. We're not putting in new road where you're going to be off of asphalt, I think is the biggest reason. But man, having a track loader on a pipe crew with the amount they're able to handle, the amount they're able to grade, that would just be such a deadly machine on a pipe crew. But again, you'd have to be in a situation where you're not doing any rebuilds because you can't go on concrete and asphalt, obviously, with those tracks. So see, that's the other weird thing about track loaders. James, you're saying that they're popular up by you. We're in this weird middle area in Michigan. So just south of us in like the Kentucky, Missouri area, down all the way down to Texas, they love track loaders. They eat them up. Then you get up here to the Michigan area, and the claim has always been that the soil's bad, and that's the reason they don't like them. I kind of have my own thoughts on that, just because you can get the LGP tracks on those suckers, and I would think they would float just fine, especially seeing some of the dozers that were able to float through the material we do. I don't see why you couldn't do that with a track loader. but for whatever reason, they don't like them here in Michigan. You don't ever see them. I think I've seen 1 or 2 in my entire time in Michigan. And then you move north up into the Canada area and you got another patch of track loader lovers. So I don't get it. I don't know. See, Nick, I have yet to run a Volvo, but every Volvo loader operator I have talked to swears up and down it's the cat's ass when it comes to loaders. So one of these days I need to go get some seat time in one and just try it for myself. They look like they've got nice cabs in them, but I have yet to actually do anything with one. So yeah, so Nick, yeah, 100% with the LGP tracks, and they make them like that's. I don't understand why they're not more popular. James, we've got them all over. Like I said, Kentucky, Missouri. I know they run them out in Oklahoma area. I know for a fact when I was down in Texas, they were really popular. Just because they can hog material. Like if you've got a stockpile of material that's got to go in trucks. Those things can carry so much freaking material in those buckets. And then you can turn around and you can actually throw GPS on them from what I understand. And you can grade them. Like you can grade with a track loader. So in so many ways, they're such awesome machines. But I don't know. I think they're super underrated for what they should be used for. But on the flip side, when it comes to basement digging, I think they're way over... I feel like the guys in the South really like them because that's what they do down there, and they swear by them because everybody does. But I think you're just gonna walk circles around them with an excavator digging a basement. So yeah, the W Series Fire, I agree. The W Series, I was not a fan of those loaders, but I tell you, the new F Series, I tell you why I like the F Series case loaders. It's got the cab basically from the Cat. It's got the power from the Cat, but it has a real transmission instead of that junk hydrostat. The only downside, and this is what Nick was talking about earlier, is they didn't. So one of the things that's also awesome about the case is the engine actually sits all the way to the rear of the machine, and the cooling stack is actually, instead of being on the back where it's sucking in all the dust, they've actually moved it up directly behind the cab, and it actually sits horizontal behind the cab. So the hot air, or the air, blows up through it, and it actually cools the engine. Because they adjusted the engine to sit in the back, the engineers were like, oh, we don't need as much counterweight. Well, unfortunately, as engineers often do, they went totally off of the paper. They actually took too much of the counterweight off, and so it's a little light in the ass. So what guys will do is they'll actually drop that rear counterweight off. They will cut like some 2-inch steel plate, bolt that up to the frame, and then bolt the counterweight back onto it. And that way they've added another, I don't know what the actual weight is, but probably 2,000 pounds worth of counterweight back there. And now you have a 938 Cat loader essentially when it comes to power and your niceness of the cab, the spaciousness, the view, but now you have the real transmission in it. So when you add that extra counterweight plate, if you go do that, they are mean machines. The F Series is a mean freaking loader. I really enjoyed running those. And thanks for joining. So from the Philippines, that's awesome. So learn hydraulic excavator. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out with that. I can absolutely, I've kind of steered away from doing like the basic, just functional operating videos, just because channels like Heavy Metal Learning and others have covered that so much. But at the same time, if you guys want me to do a series of just basic operating and basic functions, I have no problem going out and recording some of those videos. But if there's anything in particular that you'd like and covered, let me know and I'll see if I can't get you some videos out. But yeah, that's awesome from the Philippines. So what time is it in the Philippines? I didn't even think about that. That's awesome. Thanks for joining. Oh, Nick, you got a Volvo L60F, 16,000 hours. Woo! That's an old girl, but it feels brand new. So yeah, that's the thing with those Volvo loaders. So I've heard from mechanics that the Volvo hose aren't built as nice, but those loaders, I have not really heard anything negative about the Volvo loader line. So I'll have to get in one and see. Like I say always, I'll have to get some seat time in one. Nick, having a 250 plus size excavator is cheating when it comes to basement digging. You're like 4 scoops and you've dug an entire basement. That's not a practical basement machine. A practical basement machine is you get in a Cat 316 because you can haul it on a triaxle trailer wherever you want. You can, offload your trailer, disconnect. Now you can go take your spoils with your dump truck and dump them off wherever you need to, and then at the end of the day you load it right back up and you take off down the road. You don't need any permits to get around. A 250 class excavator. Why not just drop a 385 on site and take a scoop and you got a basement? That's cheating. It's 100% cheating. Have you or do you know anyone who has ever ran a dozer for a wildfire? No, I do not, Paris, but that is something I have family out in Boise, Idaho, and that's actually something I considered 5 or 6 years ago possibly trying to pursue, is getting on with one of the crews out there that does the wildfires. That seems like a freaking riot. That would be crazy. Unfortunately, no, I don't have anyone I know that has experience in that. So, boy, you just gave me an idea to go visit some family and see if I could do some interviews, though. We might get some interesting content for the channel. So, we're at in Texas, Fire. So, BVFD, I'm assuming your name, Fire, stands for something Belton Volunteer Fire Department, maybe. Are you in Belton area? We're out in Texas. I'm originally from the Austin area. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with Ranger Excavating. That's where I cut my teeth. That's where I got my start in the industry, was Ranger Excavating out of Austin there. Yeah, James, so 312 and 315 are probably the 2 most common basement machines you see here in Michigan. 315 by far and away, because of the fact that it's the biggest hoe you can get on a triaxle trailer. But yeah, if you got to get into a tight spot, I've seen guys out there with backhoes digging basements. I've seen guys out there with little dinky machines digging basements. It's kind of whatever it calls for. So there you go, AP. Got that hand shovel rocking. So Rick, you're predicting the end of the month. I would think, end of the month for sure. I'm kind of hoping they come off a week or 2 early, but we'll see what happens. It's been so stinking warm. What's up, Brian out of New York? What's happening? Wraith, what's happening? Thanks for commenting on the video over on Heavy Metal Learning too. So that was greatly appreciated, brother. So Nick, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Deeres. I don't know. My only experience on the Deere excavators, I don't even remember their model numbers. But it was their small zero swing. So like the equivalent of, what would that be, like a Cat 312? I can't even think of what machine that would be. But the cab on it was super small. Like it was claustrophobic small. I felt like I had to have my elbows tucked in the whole time. The actual digging power I didn't have a problem with on the Deere, but man, it was like super tight in the cab on that machine. I was not a fan of the Deere. So yeah, full throttle. Yeah, that's exactly where we're at. So you're talking a different, I'm assuming those are what case numbers, the 120 to 160. But yeah, that's the equivalent to the Cat 312 or 315, or the new nomenclature would be the Cat 316, I think. And I don't remember what the Cat 312 became. But yeah, you're right there in that 12 to 15 ton range. So yeah. Oh, let's see how many people we got watching here. We got 16 of us. It seems a little light tonight. I wonder why that is. Probably because everyone's waiting for it to start in another 15 minutes because they weren't on board with daylight savings. Alan, are you still in here? Let me know if you're still in here, because I was going to address your question about editing software, but I'm not going to do it if you're not in here. Comment below if you're here. Boy, I just suddenly ran out of topics. This is unfortunate. I didn't think about dead air, because normally these comments are just flying in and I can't keep up. Oh, check that out. So there you got a fire guy right there. So tell us a little bit about that fire. Like, what's the process of even getting into that industry, and is it a full-time gig, or is it kind of like on a on-call basis when there's a big wildfire that spreads, or how does that work? Oh, come on now, James. We've just gotten started on the scotch. Like, we're not there yet. Oh, you're in the Tyler area, okay? North Texas. I gotcha. So, gotcha. Had a heart attack being forced. That sucks. That's unfortunate, and it's never fun. Okay, so we're going to shift gears for a second while you guys this is where I'm depending on you guys. You got to pick it up in the chat here so I have something to chat about. So in the meantime, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Alan asked earlier what video software I use to edit all of my videos, and it was going to be way too long to type that out, so I'm going to address that real quick. I use DaVinci Resolve. It is a professional, like Hollywood grade editing program. But the really awesome thing about it is, unless you want some of the like really high-end features, it's free. And like, it's got almost everything you could ever desire in the free version. There are two huge things that I use. That is why I paid for it, which, by the way, even paying for it isn't that bad. I want to say it's $300. It's like $299. So in the grand scheme of software, like, it's not that much. And that's a lifetime. Like, anytime they update it, I think I bought it when they were on like version 16.7, and they've now created a whole new version 17, and I didn't have to pay to upgrade. It's good for life. Your license is good for life. So all that being said, the two features that you pay for are for the program to use your GPU to render instead of just using CPU, which means that while you are editing, especially when you start getting into 4K video files, it's a lot faster on your machine. It's a lot easier on your machine to edit those big files. That's number one. The number two is, if you're not familiar, when you're filming in low light conditions, and I know most of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about because this is really getting specific to video editing and recording. But when you film in low light conditions, if you've ever seen how it gets really grainy on even your cell phone camera will do it, that's called video noise. And one of the things that DaVinci has that is just, and I mean like phenomenal, is noise reduction, visual noise reduction. And they have a tool that you can actually go in there, and I use it a lot in the stuff that I film here in the studio because my lighting's a little on the dark side, and you can't even tell that there's any video noise. So those are the two big features that you're going to pay for. Outside of that, everything else in the program is free to use, and it is a powerful. I mean, you guys see the videos I'm able to put out with it. Like, you can do some ridiculously powerful stuff with it. And it's really as technical as you want to get. You can use it to just kind of cut all of your stuff together like you would with your software you're using now. Or you can start getting a little more in depth and going in and doing color grading, doing more sophisticated transitions. You can really start getting sophisticated and do things like my intro, where you've got a bunch of different videos with elements moving all over the place. And later on, I'm going to start experimenting. You should see it here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'll start doing fly-throughs where you have like the actual lettering with the scene behind it, and the camera flies through it. Like, you could do some really cool, powerful stuff with that software. And again, it's all as sophisticated as you want to make it. But the reason I did recommend it for you, Alan, was on those shaky cameras, you have a stabilization option. And what it does is, I'm going to try to use my camera here to kind of do this. So when you use your stabilizer, you'll start with your picture, the frame size that it is here, and then it will crop it. Let me see if I can make my hand straight there. So it'll crop it in to where you may crop into where you've only got, sorry, man, this is hard to do in reverse. So it may crop your picture in like this. So you cut a little of your picture off, but it's really smooth compared to what it was. And that was one of the features that I was thinking about, and that's why I asked what software you use. So there's some really powerful tools. I will say, because it is a professional grade software, it's a decently steep learning curve. I've got I don't even know how many hours into watching YouTube tutorials on how to do different things, but it's one of those wormholes that it's as complicated as you want to make it. So, you know, I bet you could probably spend 2 or 3 hours on YouTube and be decent enough that you could throw and slap some videos together. And then you could spend another 5 or 6 hours on it, and you could start really going down the wormhole of color grading your footage and making it look super nice. And then you could go another 5 or 6 hours and start doing some more sophisticated. So it's really whatever you make it to be. So anyway, sorry for the sidebar, everybody, but that I did want to kind of talk about that just because Alan and I were discussing it, and as you can see, that would have been way too much to try to write out in a comment. So going back up to AP, Hyundai, or Hyundai, however you want to pronounce it. I was always I've been a fan of their stuff. I mean, I don't have that much seat time in their equipment, and I should specify, I only have seat time in their excavators, and like, they weren't bad machines. I can't speak negatively towards them because they seem to be pretty decent machines. They did partner up with Case for a while on one of their sizes. I want to say it was like their 5 or 6 ton machine, and they've got a pretty nice cab. But outside of that, I just don't have a lot of experience on Hyundais. Nick, yes, dude, that Pushy 6 video, Scott's video of that deer running up that slope was freaking awesome. And I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, but he was talking about, and I didn't realize this either, how I was always under the impression that really the only difference between those forestry machines and regular excavators were the paint colors. And then I figured it was probably the oil pickup was a little different in order to handle some more extreme slopes. Come to find out, they have like 2 to 3 times the drawbar pull of a normal excavator to tackle those slopes. So like, those are beasts of machines. So yeah, that was an awesome, freaking awesome excavator video. Like, that was a really awesome one. He gets into some cool stuff up there. So Michael, currently working as a helicopter pilot. Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, that's freaking awesome. Medical was taken away January, dealing with the FAA. So my dad was a pilot, and he had to deal with the FAA because he had some eye issues going on. And good Lord, what a freaking, like, you talk about the epitome of a government organization. Good night. Fire, yes. I bet there is a big fire academy in Bastrop. So I left Texas like 2 or 3 years after the big Bastrop fire. In fact, I was working for Ranger Excavating, which I saw you were familiar with. I was working for Ranger, and we actually went out. I was working for a crew that was doing core samples, and we actually did some cores for a couple different sites that we're going to rebuild after the Bastrop fires. I don't know if you're familiar or you ever heard about the Oak Hill fire. They're in southeast Austin, or southwest, I don't remember. Anyway, I lived in Oak Hill at the time of that fire, and I was actually one of the places that was evacuated when that was blowing through. We had those C-130s coming through, dropping fire retardant like 300 feet over our heads in the middle. Like, that was the crazy part. It was right in the middle of Oak Hill. We're in the suburbs, and there's tankers flying over dropping retardant. So that was exciting. James, my next trip is going to be to Ohio. It almost happened today. Like, I almost wasn't live tonight because I was going to be driving down to Ohio. He asked me if I could be there Monday, but after some more discussion with the guy, it turns out we're going to push another week. So there's a good chance next weekend we will not be going live because I will be in Ohio. Or if I do, I may stay posted because I may go live from the road just on my cell phone. But it'll be from the, comforts of an Airbnb down in Ohio. But I'm going to be down there running a hoe for a guy doing a big drainage job. And then last week I did, the friend you're talking about is Rick, which if he's still in here, I don't know if he is or not, but he was in here for a while. I did go get on his job. I wasn't running anything, but I took a bunch of footage. We got some really cool, I stuck my action camera in a couple of very dicey spots on his forestry mulcher, so we should have some good footage coming for that. So full throttle, that's exactly what I would think you use a track loader for. Dig the basement with the excavator, cart that stuff around with the track loader, just because it's got so much bucket capacity on it. So fire, that's pretty interesting. So it's about 6 months of the year. The other question I have with that is, are you traveling? I mean, do they fly you out and take you out to California when they need help out there because you can run a dozer? Or is that generally pretty local? You're only going to stay at the local level? Like, those are the sort of questions I'd really be interested to know. Just how that running those fire dozers work. That's awesome stuff. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate the compliment, brother. It's just hours and hours and hours of YouTube education. That's all it is. I can't take credit for any of it. I'm just taking ideas from everything I see online and then dissecting what they're doing, and then I try to replicate it in my videos because no one in the construction side's doing it. So I get to come off as this brilliant genius who's breaking ground in new territory. I'm not. I'm just copying a bunch of the vloggers. So Michael, just saw your comment. So I don't really know what you mean by your schooling translating into equipment operating. If you've got college or you're talking about your pilot school, no, it's not really going to apply. You're still going to have to translate into being a good operator. Yeah, potentially. I mean, obviously as a pilot, especially a helicopter pilot, you've got to have pretty good hand-eye coordination, and you've got to have a good sense of what's going on. You're using your ass level all the time because that's how you're flying. So yeah, there's experiences that will definitely translate over. Now, are you going to come out of the gate and be a rip or an awesome operator? No, but you'll definitely have a leg up because at least you're familiar with running controls and visualizing what you're doing and feeling it without actually being able to see it. Like, there are elements that will absolutely help you out. So yeah, so fire, that's a great point too, which I always assumed you'd probably have to be a firefighter in order to do that, because at the end of the day, if it comes down to it, you've got to know how to actually fight the fires as opposed to just running a dozer. So Paris, is there money to be made in land clearing, and what is the average amount of time for someone to work for a company before they go out? So that was actually a question that we kind of covered last week when Rick was on, and I don't know if Rick's still in here. I haven't seen him comment for a while, but basically, for your first question, is there any money in land clearing? Maybe. It depends on your area. It's really going to take some homework in your area. I know when Rick started doing land clearing, he was really making bank, and he was just knocking jobs out right and left. And then this weird thing happened to where all of a sudden everyone started getting into land clearing. Like, I guess because of the pandemic, a bunch of guys went, oh, I could just go out and get a skid and a forestry mulcher and start a land clearing company. But all of a sudden, like over the last 8 to 10 months, there has been an explosion of competing land clearing companies. But it's turned into like this bottom feeding frenzy to where it's like guys will show up and do it for peanuts, to where I don't know how they're making any money. Like Rick and I have both been, Rick is still in here. So Rick can kind of help flesh this out. But like Rick and I have talked a couple times about how like these guys can't be making any money at the rates that they're going out for. So definitely do some research in your area to see if it's actually worth getting into the land clearing before you go commit to it. And then the average amount of time for someone to work in a company before they go to work for themselves. I don't know that there is an average. What I would say is, and this is what I said from last week, make sure you're an expert in your field before you go out on your own, because you don't have anyone to fall back on if there's an issue. You don't have any phone calls to make unless you're going to pay someone money to consult or come out and fix your screw ups. So whatever that takes. I mean, I could honestly say on the basement side, I was probably an expert about a year and a half in. Like, I had pretty much seen all of our conditions around here. I had pretty much been through most of anything I was going to see. I had been in all the weird situations where you had to do weird stuff. Like, I felt confident that I could probably go start a company tomorrow digging basements, and not too much would surprise me. But if you're talking about doing sewer installation or storm sewer installation or water main installation or underground utilities, like, there's way more that goes into that. And so it's going to take you longer to learn that area of the business. I would not be comfortable, even though I've been on the jobs, I would not be comfortable starting a company doing land balancing for a new subdivision and then installing all the underground utilities. Like, I don't have that experience. So it's not so much of how long do I need to wait, it's when do you feel comfortable making the jump that you really know what you're doing and you're not going to get yourself into a bind because you went out on your own too soon, if that makes sense. So let me scroll up here. Now we're starting to roll on the comments. Now I'm playing catch up. So the sidebar, by the way, Fire, the sidebar over here, I'm assuming are you talking about this or the ones underneath? Because this over here is actually super easy to do. I'm using OBS for my live stream software, and it's actually, that's a 5-minute deal with a YouTube video, and they'll walk you all the way through the process on that. And then same with these guys right here. Those little tags, it's a little plug-in, I think it's called Lower Thirds. And it's really, once you figure out how to set it all up, it's a pretty straightforward. I literally turn it on at the beginning of the live stream, and they just automatically roll. So a lot of my video stuff, in all honesty, I make it look way more impressive than it is. I'm giving away all of my secrets now, and you guys are going to lose all your respect for me. Oh well, what can you do? On the ground or on a grade stake. Okay, let's see here. I'm too far down. I had a Hyundai on hire the other day, and it wasn't a bad machine. Yeah, like I said, AP, I wasn't ever disappointed in the Hyundai. I never know how to pronounce it. I was never disappointed with the machine. Like, it was a nice machine. It seemed to have plenty of balls, and it ran fine. It was smooth. So I just don't have enough seat time to make a real call on it. Wansy, what are you talking about on the grade or on the ground or on a grade stake? What does it mean? I didn't see if you commented up above. Flush that out so I can answer you. Nick, never ran Liebherr, been super curious. Their hose make a lot of noise with those pumps, but someone pointed out the other day on a video I commented that on, that it's because the engines are so quiet, which I didn't even think about. They look like really nice machines. I know everyone in Europe seems to rant about them, but I've never had a chance to run one. Ryan, what are some red flags to look for when going to a new equipment dealer to know if they'd be good? First of all, your sales guy. Like, no one realizes how, and Rick will attest to this because I was his sales guy. No one thinks about how important it is to have a good relationship with your sales guy and how much that relationship means on the backside of the transaction. So the way I always thought about my sales were, the sale was actually the beginning of a relationship. And it wasn't like at the end of the sale, when you walk away with the keys and I walk away with the check, like, we're done. Like, to me, that was like the beginning. Like, my first hurdle had been passed, and now we're starting our long marathon together. And a lot of sales guys don't think that way, and that should be a red flag to you, because what happens is the second your nice new shiny machine goes down and you pick up your phone call to your sales guy and he doesn't answer, and you leave him a voicemail, hey, my machine's down, a lot of guys won't answer and they won't call you back. I worked with several of those guys. You need to really dive into that relationship with your salesperson. The other thing I would say is go contact some guys who already own equipment from that dealership that have had it for a while, and get a good feel for when their machine goes down, how quick is their service department able to get out and respond, and do they bend them over the table on service charges and parts charges and all of that stuff. Those are the two main things I would start digging into right away. I would even say the more important one is to call some contractors that already run their equipment and really ask about their relationship with the dealership. I can't really, there's so many things that kind of go into that relationship that it would be really hard to delve into that more. Those two things should be a pretty good indicator of what kind of situation you're going to get into. Great question, by the way. James, amen to that. Hopefully better than the last trip. The circumstances are completely different on this one, so I'm hopeful this is going to be a good one too. Oh, so you were familiar, Fire, with the Oak Hill fire? Yeah, that was an exciting time. I was sitting in my apartment at the time, and we were right there on 71, and we heard sirens all the time go by. But that one particular afternoon, it was just one after another, and like a half hour goes by, and I'm like, what the heck is going on out there? Like, there's been a crap load of sirens. And so I walk out. Our apartment was kind of buried back into the trees, so I walk out to the highway, and the highway is totally backed up. And I'm like, okay, there's probably a wreck. We were right there where 71 and 290 come together. It's called the Y in Oak Hill. I walk out. I'm like, okay, I'll walk up there to the Y because I bet there's a pretty good accident, and, you know, maybe we'll see something cool. And as I'm walking, someone's got their window down in their car, and I said, hey, do you know why all the traffic stopped? And he goes, yeah, because of that. And he points behind me, and I turn around, and it is just a wall of smoke as far as I can see, and it's like a half mile away. And I was like, okay. And by that time, within about 20 minutes of that conversation, we had helicopters flying over us, dropping water with the buckets. We had those C-130s come within about 45 minutes. I think we had 2 C-130s doing drops. Just like, it escalated quickly. And before we knew it, we had a cop knocking on the door saying, hey, you guys need to evacuate. We don't know if you're going to have an apartment after this evening. So, very interesting. Ryan, what's happening? Thanks for joining us, buddy. Things are going rather well. It's another good live stream. We're getting some good traffic now. I'm getting excited. Got 18 viewers now, so we're doing good. Question for anyone here from Wraith. If you could live anywhere in the U.S., where would you go to have a good excavator job? So if we're going to go based off of excavator jobs, I would say anywhere in the northern states where you've traditionally had a union, because your wages are typically going to be better. Now, if we're going for scenic beauty, I would say probably Colorado or California, maybe. That's my picks, but I just don't want to deal with all the crazy people in California and the rate of living for living in California. Oh, Rick said Seattle. I'd live in Seattle. I got a cousin out there. It's beautiful up there. Gimp Gunfighter. First of all, kudos to the name. Heavy equipment school worth the money? No, it's not. I mean, sorry to be frank, but no, it's not. In this current job market, you can go to a company, hire on as a rookie, and they will pay to train you, instead of you going and forking out, $15,000 to $20,000, $30,000, whatever it's going to cost you to go to heavy equipment school. It's not worth the money. I mean, if you've got no other options, yeah, okay, maybe go, but honestly, there's so many people hurting for operators right now, and I can't tell you the number of contractors that I've talked to that have said, hey, I would rather hire a green guy that doesn't know anything, that doesn't have any bad habits, and train him, than hire someone who's got 20 years of experience, a ton of bad habits, and is going to constantly be arguing with me about his way being better for doing something. So I would tell you, try to go get a job first. If you can't get a job in the industry, fall back on the school. Gotcha. Thanks for all the information, Fire. That's really good information. I appreciate that. Little Finkel. What's happening, brother? Yeah, I totally agree. That's exactly what happened with the forestry mulching. Everyone saw an easy, low barrier to entry way of making money, and they all jumped on it. And Rick chimed in there with what you should do before you go out on your own. Yes, 100%. So how hard is it, do you know, how hard is it to get into Cal Fire's program? I'm kind of curious about that. And what's the pay like? I don't know. I feel like because you're on the firefighting side, it doesn't matter whether you're running machines or not. Firefighting traditionally doesn't pay crap, so I feel like you'd have to do it purely for the passion because it's not going to pay you any real money. Yeah, Finkel, that's a make or break deal for the equipment world, is having a salesman that's got your back, has a relationship with you, knows you by name. Like, that's where it's at. And that's, unfortunately, this industry is like everything else. Customer service is just slowly dying off, and it's just not what it used to be. Yeah, a lot of the companies I know, CAT, Alta, AIS are the big competitors around here. They're moving more to the model where you have a salesman for small equipment, you have a salesman for large equipment, you have a salesman for rentals. So you're talking to like 3 or 4 different people depending on what you're doing that particular day. So if you wanted to rent a skid and also talk to someone about buying a Mini and maybe also buying a 320 or like a 330 over the next year or two, you're talking to 3 different individuals. And if you have issues, you're talking to a 4th individual. So unfortunately, that like one-stop sales guy experience is slowly dying out. The doing away with that experience is actually part of what got me fired from my sales job, because I was quite vocal about that not being the way to go. And that got me on the Pookie list with my previous employer. So, best profession to get into after school to get the most seat time to get your fire dozer. Honestly, if you're going for the dozer route, Gimp, I would tell you get into residential work, because you're generally going to be running a D3 or a D5, so you're going to be running a smaller dozer, which I could be totally wrong, but I think most of your forestry stuff is like a D5 or a D6, isn't it? You know, they want something that's pretty mobile and pretty light that you can carry it around and drop it anywhere in the woods. So you're going to want to get experience on the smaller track-based dozers anyway and get comfortable with those. And you're going to be doing finish grading on residential jobs, which is going to make you a far, far, far better dozer operator overall. So I would actually say, and you're doing it on a daily basis too. When I was working for a residential company, my general work schedule is I would dig 1 or 2 basements a week, and then the rest of the week I was finish grading or backfilling, or it was all dozer work. So I would actually steer you to that, because you're going to get a crap load of seat time, and it's going to be in the dozers that actually are pretty applicable to what you'll be doing. Pays better, Javi. So Paris, I don't know for a fact, but my gut tells me that it's probably going to be operating, just because you're going to be working better, longer hours. You've got more overtime abilities. But I could be totally wrong on that. But that's just my gut feel. James, new to the stream. So welcome to the stream. First of all, thanks for joining us. Give you some pointers on how to find a company job that would work the best right out of career school, which I'm in for heavy equipment operator. So at 18. So honestly, James, the market right now is starved for operators. So what I would tell you is you're in a unique point in this industry where everything's working in your favor. So what I would actually tell you to do is hit the internet, do some Google searches for excavating companies in your area, and you be choosy. You start looking for companies that you would like to work for. And like I was telling someone else earlier this week, apply for companies that don't necessarily have a thing saying they're hiring. Just because they aren't actively advertising that they're hiring doesn't mean that they won't take someone in that drops a resume that looks like they're a good candidate. If you're 18, you've already spent some money going to heavy equipment school, if you have any experience in anything like landscaping or other outdoor stuff, which by the way, if you need help building a resume, I have a video on building your resume. Go check for that on my channel, because I talk about kind of what to highlight in your work history. But honestly, if you have any outdoors experience on top of just having come out of heavy equipment school, you're actually a really good candidate for a lot of companies, because you don't have any bad habits. You haven't been in the industry for a long time, but you actually show initiative because you went and spent your own money to learn the industry. That's my advice is go cherry pick some companies and throw some resumes and applications out there and see what you come back with. What's the work week look like as a heavy machine operator? Sure, that's vast. So Race, that is a difficult question to answer because it totally depends. So I will give you the range of the spectrum. So when I was down in Texas, I was working for a non-union company called Ranger Excavating. They did heavy civil projects. I was on a major highway construction. We were working 6 days a week. We would generally work about 12 hours on our weekdays, and Saturdays we would pop in. I think we fired the machines up at 7 and we got out at 1, if I remember right, on Saturdays. And then we had Sundays off. So that's what it looked like that was a large, heavy civil company. Most of your heavy civil companies are going to work some pretty good hours because almost every single one of those projects has pretty firm deadlines. They have pretty big penalties for not hitting those deadlines. So you are going to work crazy hours. They also get bonuses for getting the job done before the deadline. So generally, any heavy civil company, you're going to work some crazy hours. Opposite end of the spectrum, I moved up here to Michigan. I went to work for a small residential company that did mostly basement work, new builds, stuff like that. We did the one-off, like, storm repair stuff, small stuff like that. But by far and away, all of our work was doing new builds, basement construction, and finish grading. There I was 5 days a week unless we absolutely had to work Saturdays. In the summer swing, we would start working some Saturdays, but it was still pretty sporadic. I was generally working 10 hours a day probably on a regular weekday. But there it was more, as opposed to like on the civil side where you're just going to work the crazy hours. On the residential side, it was more like what did the day need? So like if I wrapped up a basement at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it didn't make sense to really do anything else that day, I would chain up, take it, my piece of equipment back to the shop, and then just fire up the next day. So there were some days where I got out 4 to 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Other nights you'd wrap up closer to 6 or 6:30. And then in the winter, at your heavy civil companies in the north, you're going to get a layoff. Down in the south, it's not necessarily true. They tend to work year-round. The residential company, it was really kind of weather dependent. So basically, we would continue to work through the winter, but there were some weeks where we would only work 1 or 2 days because the weather was just too rough. And there were other weeks where we would just work a normal work week. And there were a couple week stretches where I would take unemployment because we just had some really cold pops move through and temperatures weren't warm enough to really work. So it really depends on what you're doing and what industry you go into. Pipeline work, you're going to work a crap load of hours and it's pretty much going to be all the time. It just depends on what you go into. So sorry I can't get more specific on that, but that's where you get to, again, kind of going back with what I was just saying about cherry picking. Like, we're in such a unique time in this industry. You do, to an ability, get to cherry pick what you do. Go ask these questions of your company that you're possibly applying to. What kind of hours do you work? What's a typical work week look like? There's nothing wrong with asking those questions. Obviously, you don't want to make it sound like you want every other day off, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with asking what their typical work week looks like. And if they work way more hours than you want to work, don't apply. It's not that big of a deal because you've got 10 other companies you could go to. So yeah, James, that's the typical experience with a lot of guys as far as it goes with their salesman is you hear from him twice a year and it's only when he checks to see if you want to buy something. Meanwhile, Rick has a salesman that comes out and runs his machine for him because he can't find anybody. So there you go, Rick. You should probably still be paying me for buying that machine. Let's see here. Yeah, Nick, that's a great window into summer hours. That's so when I hired in at Dan's Excavating up here, which was another heavy civil company, we were doing a major highway project and we were working 80-ish hours a week. It was 7 days a week. I didn't see my first day off for 35 days, between 30 and 35 days. And then we got a national holiday, so I got a 2-day weekend. Or no, I think they did give us the 3-day weekend. They were super nice, gave us the 3-day weekend. Then it was like another 40 something days before I saw another day off. I had multiple stretches where I worked 24 hours to 30 hours straight, because of the project. Like, we had a certain window we had to get stuff done. So you can work some insane hours in this business for sure. It just depends on where you're at. So let's see here. Oh, interesting, Fire. So they don't even discuss pay. That's a bummer. Dump Trucks, what's going on? Thanks for joining, man. I don't know what language you got there. Yeah, I don't know what language that is that you've got cooking. Let's see here. D6s through D8. Oh, that would be... Running a D8 in a Fire would be a blast. I'm not gonna lie. Am I taking resumes, Wraith? Who are you asking if they take resumes? Because I don't take resumes because I work for myself and I can't even afford to pay myself. I'm actually poor and have to scrap for gas money. That's why I go work for Rick all the time. So I'm not taking resumes unless it's volunteer resumes. If you'd like to volunteer to edit some videos, I'll absolutely take you up on that. Ooh, Gimp Gunfighter, that's a great question that I do not know the answer to. I'm assuming it's like everything else. It all depends on the area that you're working in, but I don't know, buddy. I do not know. Yeah, Fire, that's what I'm familiar with, is most of the guys running the high track 6s, and I didn't know they got up into the 7s, but yeah, the ones that I've seen primarily are the high track 6s. James, in December, sent out resumes, 15 plus, only heard back from 1. Oh, so I can tell you right there, your mistake, James, was sending your resume out in January. I don't know what part of the country you are from, but if you're anywhere remotely close to the north where it slows down for the wintertime, you won't hear from anyone. They generally don't start hiring until about now. This is the time of year right now to apply. Everyone's starting to fire up. Everyone's starting to shake all the dust off from the winter and starting to get their workforce in order. So now is when I would hit it with the resumes and the applications. And you should hear back. In all honesty, if you don't hear back from anyone, I would really start to dig into your resume and your previous experiences and see if there's something there that sticks out and is kind of funky. But right now is when I would apply. Hey, Dignation, what's going on, man? Yeah, weekend's going good. Hope yours is going well too. Thanks for popping in, buddy. Let's see here. Yeah, James, try applying now. Just coming back to your second comment there. Try applying now when everyone's kind of firing up for the season. Dan, what would you recommend as a best case scenario in-game to target moving forward in today's working climate? Crane. Dan, it depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in hoisting, I would 100% push you to hoisting. That is, out of all of the areas in this industry that's hurting, hoisting is hurting the worst. And there's really not a lot of guys that are jumping in there to fill seats with the vigor at which people are retiring. And there is a really good money. Personally, I said this earlier, personally, if I did it again and knowing what I know now, I would go into hoisting. If you didn't want to go into hoisting, if you really want to stay in the dirt world, I always tell guys, go learn how to run a grader and get good at it. Because if you run a grader and you're good at it, you can write your own ticket. You can go wherever you want. Finding a good finished grader operator is ridiculously difficult to find these days. That's just one of those skills that if you want to kind of future-proof yourself, man, learn a grader. So those would be the two that I would tell you to kind of go towards. Paris, if you could have whatever operating job you wanted, what would it be? Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, This is where I'm in a unique position because of the channel. What I'm doing now is ideal, and I'll tell you why. I get to run a variety of equipment because I'm all over the place and I work for different guys. I get to meet a ton of different people. I'm rarely on a job for, I think that one I did with Rick for 2 weeks straight was about the longest I've been on a single job site, which is awesome because, as we all know, as exciting as it is to be on a job site for the first couple of days, it becomes home and gets old really quick. So being able to kind of shuffle around is pretty incredible. Also, as soon as my bank account kind of builds up enough steam, my goal is to actually start traveling around the country and working with like you guys. Like, I want to pick guys out of my audience to go visit and spend a couple days with and work alongside with. And so, like, to be able to go see the country and work in different areas of the country and see different things and how things are done differently than in Michigan or Texas, like, this is, to an extent, I'm kind of living out a dream right now, and I feel a little cheesy saying it, but that's why this has been so exciting that the channel's finally taken off. This is a really, really unique opportunity, and I'm really blessed to have that in front of me. So outside of that, if I had to pick, I don't know, I would probably say working for a company kind of like Kidco or something up there in Canada, doing something like Scott used to do where you're running a huge mass excavator, just bombing trucks all day. I love production hoe work. Like, that's just, for whatever reason, it's like this weird mix of being like zen, soothing, but at the same time, it's also a constant improve your cycle time, like constantly trying to beat the clock and get better in my head. And like, that would be a lot of fun to get in a situation like that. So yeah, it just depends on the situation there. Let's see here. Pay, work availability. So Dan, going back to your question real quick, cranes especially, pay, absolutely phenomenal. Work availability is going to be pretty much phenomenal as well, just because there's so few operators out there that are able to run cranes. Excuse me. Grader, it depends on how good you are, and it depends on what company you're working for and what area of the country you're in. That's all I can say there. So there's a really big spread. Harris, I have never done any operating in the Florida Panhandle. I have not done any operating in Florida whatsoever. Yeah, Nick, especially as you're trying to wrap up projects, yeah, the hours it's weird because you work crazy hours getting up to that threshold, and then it's like all of a sudden the project manager and the superintendent realize they're going to make it, and then they're like, okay, guys, we're going to back it down to like 7 hours a day, and you're going to work 4 days a week, and it's like, we were gonna finish out so strong, and I was going to take home this huge fat paycheck, and you just yanked it out from under my feet. Would you recommend, Ryan, going to your question, working for a smaller residential company over large civil companies? Okay, so that's a great question. The reason you typically see me recommend going to a residential company first is because, first of all, you're going to be far less lost on a residential job than you are on a heavy civil project. Like, I can tell you, coming from the residential side, knowing how to run equipment, on my first civil project, I didn't have a freaking clue what was going on. I was drowning, even though I had already been in the industry at that point. I had worked for Ranger on some heavy civil projects, but I only ran an off-road truck, so it's not like I did anything from a skill standpoint. And then I've been in the residential side for 2.5 years at that point, so I knew how to dig, and I knew how to set grades, and I knew all that stuff. I had no idea what was going on those civil projects getting into it. So I feel like it would be a lot easier to enter from the residential side because you're not going to drown. The second reason is because generally those are smaller companies. You're going to be a lot quicker to be able to get into the seat of a machine. You know, working at a 300 plus employee company, you are one of 300 people. You may tell the hiring coordinator or the HR rep that you want to work your way into a seat, and they're going to say, okay, that's great. That information never makes it to the foreman or the superintendent on the job site, and so you just become the punk on the end of a shovel, and that's where you spend your days until you finally bark up somebody's leg, you know, enough that they decide to give you a shot. versus at a residential company when you're one of 10, 15 guys. You know, you can have direct contact with the owner or with the guy running the jobs, and you can tell him very quickly, hey, I want to run a piece of equipment, and you're in direct contact with him, and he's going to know that. He's going to be watching you and studying you to see if you can handle it and if you've got good work ethic. And so instead of it turning into a 2 or 3 year deal where you see before you see seat time, maybe it's only like with me, I think within 4 to 6 months, I was probably getting in the seat of the host somewhat regularly, and he was starting to get me on the dozer. So that's why I generally recommend guys going the residential route. The downside to that is generally it's not going to pay as well. When I left my small dirt company, I was making $18 an hour, and that was at the upper end of what he was paying his guys. And when I went to work for Dan's, mind you, we were flipping over to union at that point, but still, I think my hourly pay jumped up to $32 an hour, so double, and that's not including the benefits. So, you know, there are drawbacks, but I feel like getting into the industry and spending at least a year or two in that side of it really has enough benefits that it's worth the trade-off. Because the other aspect of it is that I haven't talked about is the amount of time you're going to get on the end of the shovel on that residential company. Like, it's drinking from a fire hydrant of knowledge. Like, you're just getting blasted in the face with all this stuff because you're responsible for doing it all. And the owner or the foreman is going to be there to hold your hand on the residential side versus on the heavy civil side. Like, you're just thrown to the wolves and it's like sink or swim. So it's kind of harder to get that education, I guess. So that's why you see me kind of recommend going the residential route, even though it doesn't pay as much right off the bat. Mr. Eat the Homeless. That is quite the name. That is quite the name. Hey, thanks for showing up, buddy. I appreciate you showing up, even if you are a little late here. So, yeah, AP, we do stop over the winter up here in the north, not in the south. When I was in Texas, we were year-round, but up here in the north, the weather gets nasty enough, we get enough snow that it becomes impractical because it's just not productive to work in the winter, especially dead of winter when you start getting into 3-4 foot of frost in the ground. You'll spend a whole day just chunking through the frost to get down to where you need to dig to. You can't hold a grade worth crap because you're breaking through frost if you're in that frost line. So it just becomes not productive to work. Andre, I have no experience in heavy equipment, but would like to take on an apprenticeship. Does it require experience? No, that's the beauty of this business, Andre. It is the skilled trades, man. Go apply, tell them you're totally green, tell them you're willing to work and ready to learn. You can get you a job, and you will pick it up all on the job site. For those of you who don't know, I am not a generational element of this business. My dad was a banker. He does bank consulting. I grew up, we owned one of the first computers that came out, an old IBM, and I grew up playing on computers and learning networking and stuff like that. My dad was kind of heavy into the IT side until the banking kind of steered him towards the consulting side. So I hit this industry, and that's the other thing too, is I didn't get into this industry until I was 24, 23, somewhere in there. So it's not even like I was an 18-year-old like young kid. Like, I had spent some time in the workforce before I got into the excavating industry. And so, I mean, seeing my channel, you can see how much knowledge I've been able to gain over the last 10 to 12 years, 10-ish years. I don't remember. I'm not going to try to do math on the fly here, but you know, you can see the knowledge that I've gained. That's purely from the industry. I did not go to school for construction. I didn't take any classes outside of what the classes were provided for me by the union. It has 98% been job site experience. So absolutely, just go dive in, brother. I mean, it's a blast. James, absolutely. Let me know if you've got any other questions, man. Would it be good to ask if my school could focus on high track dozer during school if they have them? So GIMP, I will say this, and I had this discussion earlier in the week with someone on a video. High track or regular low track, like, it doesn't matter. The dozer's going to run the same. it's what matters is the length of the track base. That's what's going to make a difference on how difficult it is to grade in the dozer. The high track versus just the sprocket in the rear is really the only thing you're changing there, is how the power is getting applied and how much undercarriage wear you have. And, they're trying to protect that final drive by keeping it up. But as far as the handling of the dozer, hoopties, and being able to grade, it doesn't matter whether it's high track or not. The main thing I tell everyone is, if you want to be a really good dozer operator, go for a D3, because if you can grade in a D3 and finish grade in a D3, you can run any dozer you want and you'll be really good at it, because it is stinking hard to grade in a short track-based D3. I mean, that's just the most difficult situation you're going to get into. Or skid steer, get into a CTL. That'll do it for you too. Yeah, Nick, 100%. If you're a good grader operator, companies will bend over to keep you. Like, they will bend over and spread them and offer for you to stay. Like, that's how bad. It's up there with crane operators. Like, there's just no one to take over those seats. And the guys are retiring out of the industry so fast that there's no one to replace them. And yes, I did. I developed the skill to get stuck in a haul truck, as you saw, waiting for the live stream to start. That was absolutely my getting stuck in the haul truck. And that wasn't the only time either. So sometimes you just look for the holes to see what'll happen. Eat the Homeless, the Case DL550. Okay, so the honest truth is, I am dying to sit in that machine. I am really hoping that at some point, maybe this year, again, fingers crossed, I am hoping sometime this year I may get to sit in that machine. I cannot wait to do it. I think that's going to be a real game changer for the industry. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if CAT comes out with something similar to it here in the next year or two. You're not going to see them coming out of Case for a bit yet, just because they've had some production issues due to COVID. And then they also didn't really slate it for a big release anyway, because they wanted to roll it out slow. And, in Case's defense, it was a wise decision. Let's not take this machine. They made this mistake with the Alpha Series skid steers. They had this totally revamped skid steer, and they're like, boom, throw it out on the market before it's fully ready. And then you spent the next 6-7 years working out all of the kinks that should have been handled back when they were developing the machine, except now it's happening in the market, and it's totally burned their name when it comes to skid steers and the skid steer market. They didn't want that to happen with the DL550, so they've only rolled out, and if I remember right, someone was saying they were only going to roll out like 20 units in the US total the first year. And then they were going to babysit the snot out of them to figure out what's going on. That being said, I have talked to someone in the know, and when it comes to the B series skid steers, and I don't know, because the DL550 is kind of a departure from the basic skid steer, but I'm assuming because they share a lot of commonality, it's kind of along the same lines. Excuse me. I am hearing that the new skid steer line is way better. They're not having any of the issues that they had with the Alpha Series line. But by the way, I'm reading comments as I'm trying to talk, and so sometimes I talk the comments, so I apologize. But all that to say, to go back to your question, the DL550 is going to be a game changer in my opinion, especially for your smaller guys that are doing residential work, because landscapers too. Traditionally, you've had to come out, you've had to bring a skid steer to cart your material around, and then you've had to chase it with a little dozer to do your actual finish grading. And now you've just shrunk that down to one machine. I can bring one machine out. I can do all of my carting of the material around to get it, backfill the basement, get the stuff where it needs to go. Then I can flip around and throw on my dozer blade, and it's an actual usable dozer blade, because it is a C-frame that pins to the frame of the machine. Now it's a true dozer application. I can go there and I can finish grade that lot with one machine. Instead of spending $200,000 on equipment. I have one machine that's, and I don't know what it retails for. This is totally a guess, so please don't hold me to this, but call it 120 grand for that DL550 with the C-frame dozer blade. You know, you're still 80 grand cheaper than you would have been buying a used dozer and the skid steer. So that's where I see it being a real game changer. Same with these landscapers, you know, to be able to do all of your rough grade work with the dozer blade, then flip around and put a Harley rake on the same machine and do all of your finish. Like, that's a game changer. So I have really high hopes for it. It sounds like they've given it the horsepower that it needs. I want to say it's got the backhoe motor in it, so it's got the 110 horse. I don't know that for a fact. I haven't gone in and looked at the specs on it. But yeah, it's good. Let's see here. Homeless. What were you saying about professional? Are you talking about your name? Yeah, I bet you're talking about your name. Yeah, you know, Eat the Homeless is a little, I wouldn't call it the highest of professional names, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Ryan, I do too. That DL550, I'm dying to see that thing in action. I'm really hoping I can hook something up with Case to where I can go get some seat time in that sucker. What's the best avenue approach to specializing in one specific piece of machinery? Are you allowed to pick? So Paris, that's a good question. Totally depends on the company. There are some companies where you're just going to be a jack of all trades. There are other companies that they put you in a machine and that is your machine. I would say the best way to do that is get really good at a machine and then go hire in at a company to run that machine. So if you're, you know, to your question of what the best avenue is, I would say go hire in at a company that's a jack of all trades company and try to dial in on something that you like and you enjoy doing. You're going to get experience on everything, which I think everyone should do, just because it makes you an all-around better operator. But once you find something that you love and you like, that's when, you know, maybe a year or two in, you go apply at a new company and you say, hey, look, I'm an expert. My expertise is running a hoe, or my expertise is finish dozing. And that's where you can kind of work yourself into maybe more of a specialized position. Yeah, see, Nick, I went to school for business. I have a bachelor's degree in business. And then I went into construction and didn't use it at all. So I'm glad I spent that $60,000. So Dig Nation, your name is Matt. I will try my best to remember that. I'm not going to make any promises. In fact, I would say it's going to take me probably 2 or 3 live streams before I remember that. So I'm just going to fair warn you. But nice to meet you, Matt. See, I'm really hoping to kind of go back in that conversation with Homeless and everybody there about the DL550. That's where I'm hoping Case will kind of hook me up, because I would love to start bringing some real in-cab footage to YouTube and really put it through its paces. Whenever I did any of the events when I was selling equipment with Case, whenever we did any of the events, we would kind of do the sales side of everything, and then I would wait until all the sales guys were done playing, and I would go take like their dozer line. That's why I know their dozer line so well, is because I took those suckers into sticky, freaking nasty clay and rutted that thing up and really put it through its paces. And that's why I can confidently say, like, the Case dozer line pushes like nobody's business, is because I put them through their paces. And I have yet to see anyone do that with the DL550. It's mostly been like promotional videos that have been done. And so that's where I'm hoping Case will kind of come alongside me, possibly, and let me start getting some footage of putting one of those things through its paces and really working the dog snot out of it, so that I can give an honest opinion of, okay, this thing's way too heavy, it's not going to work, or yes, this thing's balanced really well, it's got the power, the dozer's worth it. Like, those are the sort of videos I think would benefit contractors more than just seeing a rah-rah pep talk about how great this machine is. So, and Matt, yes, field experience is way different than school experience. That's for any of you guys that we've talked to this evening about going to school. don't come out of school thinking that you're anywhere close to having real ground knowledge. You're still very much in the seat of just keep your mouth quiet and learn, just because you have so much to learn. What's up, Phil? How you doing over there in Australia, brother? Good to have you, man. We are slowly getting back to normal. So I was reading the other day that the US is up to like 13% of the population vaccinated. Dude, I'm hoping by like May, June, we can start getting into some sort of normal. But how about you guys over in Australia? You guys still pretty well locked down? Yeah, homeless. I'm really hoping I can get my hands. I'm hoping so bad I can get my hands on too. I talked to my old case rep the other day. And I told him absolutely the thing I'm working with case right now. I told him I'm absolutely gunning to try to get some seat time in that thing. So Nick, it's the case DL 550. It's called the Minotaur. That was their project name for it. It's a mama of a skid steer. It's got 110 horsepower motor in it. At least that's what they were saying it was going to have in it. Like I said, I haven't checked the spec sheets. The way it has changed the industry is so traditionally whenever you had a dozer blade on a skid steer, what happened is it would couple to the plate for the skid steer, which gave you no rigidity. And that's why everyone hates dozer blades on skid steers, is because it doesn't have the rigidity needed to actually doze. You can't be accurate with it. What they've done with the DL 550 is you will take your bucket off, so you'll still have your skid plate. There is an actual C-frame, like on a little D3 or D5 dozer, the C-frame that six-way blade is connected to. You have a C-frame that in the middle of the C-frame is a coupler for your quick coupler. So you run your dozer, your skid steer up against that, you pull it on just like you would a bucket, and it's got the blade out in front of you. You couple it to your skid steer adapter plate, just like you would a bucket, but that pulls the C-frame alongside of your frame, and then within the cab you have a button and there's pins that come out from the frame and actually pins the C-frame to the skid steer. So now it is actually coupled to the frame of the machine. What that does is it also converts your controls from skid steer controls. Now they go into full dozer control configuration. And all you have to do is get out, hook up your auxiliary hydraulics like you would any other skid steer attachment. Now you have six-way blade functionality inside the cab with dozer controls, and you've got 110 horse behind it, which puts you on par with what you guys tell me. That's like a D3 or a D5 when it comes to horsepower. You can get it with 3 different track options. You can get it with the rubber band traditional skid steer tracks. You can get it with steel single bar grouser tracks, which you guys, if you don't know what that is, that's standard dozer tracks. Or you can get it with steel triple bar grousers, which if you don't know what that is, that's the Excavator style tracks. So you have 3 different track configurations on that machine that you can get it with. It's just going to be a monster of a machine. So anyway, that's what it is. Oh, let's see here. Diesel and I are so Shan, going back to your question, working on the pipeline. If you don't mind traveling, I would absolutely go work on a pipeline. There's really good money. You get to see all sorts of country. You're generally working off the grid, like back in the woods somewhere. Pipeline work is the bomb if you don't mind traveling. If you don't like traveling, do not go into pipeline work because it is a crap load of travel. But yes, I'd absolutely recommend you getting into pipeline work if you like traveling. Finkel, I'm sorry, this is way back, so I'm sure he's gone, but thanks for popping in, man. Why is that even a high speed 6-way blade attachment? So no, it's video big draw on the 550. If I had to guess, homeless, it's because of the way they are configured. As far as if you think about a skid steer, they're generally geared to where you have some decent carry speeds because it's a skid steer. Versus if you think about the max speed of a dozer, like they're just set up to have more torque. That's a total guess. That's a total just Brian spitballing here, but that is my guess. Is it has to do with the actual the actual final drives and the gearing in those drives. They don't have the torque that necessarily one of those small dozers have. The other aspect you have to contend with is the fact that it doesn't weigh as much as a D3 or a D5. And really, when you start thinking about the physics of what's happening when you push a pile of dirt with a dozer is only able to push the amount of dirt that equals the weight of the machine plus any down pressure you can get onto that machine with the blade. So, you know, if you didn't have any down pressure pushing your tracks down, the second you have an equal amount of weight in front of you as to what your dozer weighs, your tracks are just going to spin. So, you know, going back to our skid steer, if your skid steer's, you know, I don't know what the actual weights are, but 6,000 or 7,000 pounds lighter than like a D5 dozer, you can have all the horsepower in the world, but if you don't have that weight to push that dirt forward, then it's, you know, you're not going to get there. So that's why, yes, it is a high horsepower skid and you've got the advantages of that, but at the same time, the excitement is the fact that that dozer blade actually couples to the machine. So for the first time, you have a viable dozer for a skid steer. Excuse me. Which, by the way, the next step in that, if you kind of logically think about it, that machine has full-blown GPS capabilities. So now not only do you have a skid steer that has a dozer blade, a 6-way dozer blade, it's also capable of putting either a 2D or a 3D GPS system on it. And now you have a fully functional GPS system for doing all of your fine grade work on these heavy civil projects. So you could take this machine out there on your finish crew, use the bucket to cart all your topsoil and everything around, and now you can use, you know, flip over to your 6-way blade, turn your GPS on, and now you can finish grade all of your topsoil to GPX accuracy for the whole job. So again, it has the potential to be a real game changer. Oh, let's see here. Peyton, thanks for swinging in, brother. Wraith, name should be easier to remember, same as yours, same spelling too. So Brian, oh, there you go. And it's with a Y. Oh, a gentleman of culture. All right, I tell you what, guys, I'm sorry, but I've been sitting here sipping scotch. I have to pee. So you guys are just going to have to hang tight, run with the comments for like 2 minutes. I'm literally just going to be 2 minutes, okay? And then I'll be right back. Okay, Diamond, technically you weren't on hold. We were just on a brief intermission. Okay, just fair enough. Give me some credit here. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Okay. Let me get caught up here. Let's see here. Most diverse, high-paying jobs outside of construction. Boom, 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 boom. Actually, let me bump back up here to Ryan. The 6-way blade attachment just hook up like the bucket. It doesn't have the same stability as a frame item. Yeah, so that's been the traditional problem with most dozer blades on a skid, Ryan, is they don't couple to the frame, and that's why this is such a game changer, is because it couples to the frame. So Paris, most diverse, high-paying operating jobs outside of construction. I guess, what do you mean outside of construction? Like industries totally, or kind of specify what you mean by that one? Let's see here. Yeah, Nick, I'm with you. I'm really hoping things start getting normal by the June time frame. It's time. It's time we return to normalcy. Yeah, going with homeless, absolutely, with the weight. Matt, I'm sorry I missed you. Thanks for popping in. Sorry, I'm trying to get caught up here, guys. So Ryan, yes, the rubber tracks aren't going to provide as much traction, but the big advantage there is obviously because it's a skid steer, you're going to spend a fair amount of time on, you know, existing concrete or asphalt driveways, and so it, you know, it's one of those things you're going to have to kind of weigh your options. Everyone's going to have to weigh their options when it comes to what they're going to do. So, so Paris, or no, I'm sorry. Let me pop back up here, getting ahead of myself. Oh yeah, Phil, we're all looking forward to the checks. Now what we're not looking forward to is paying all those checks back over time when another administration decides that we need to stop spending money as a country. So, but yeah, we're looking forward to getting which from what I understand, I don't know, you guys tell me if any of you guys have seen them, but I was reading something this morning that I think some people have already started getting their checks, believe it or not. So thanks, Shand. I appreciate the compliment on that heavy metal learning video. I'm gonna try to do a couple more videos for Randy over there. He's been hounding me to kind of do some more content for him. So I think I'll do 2 or 3. We'll see what happens, and try to get some different content over there for him. So, but I appreciate you watching that video. Is that how you found me? How did you find my channel, by the way, Shand? Paris, grader operators. So the biggest reason I've found that no one runs grader is because 90% of the time when there is a grader on site, it is typically full bore, like busy doing grading. And so it's really difficult for contractors to find time during normal working hours to train someone on a grader. So what it boils down to is you would have to come in on your own time or stay late after hours to learn, or if you're in the union, you'd have to go to the union training center, which is the option I was actually going to pursue, and go learn it there. And, you know, let's be honest, most people are lazy and they don't want to do that. They don't want to take the time to do that. And so as a result, what's happened is all these old timers have just continued to stay in the seat until they're ready to retire, and there's no one there to replace them. So that's essentially why you don't see many people running graders anymore, is because it's just too difficult to train on the job. You need someone that at least knows their way around the grader before you start throwing them up against curb lines, you know, telling them to finish grade to prep for asphalt. So let's see here. Yeah, and as Ryan just covered, it is a tedious technical machine to run. Like, there's nothing fast-paced and exciting about a grader. It is a lot of very high concentration hours. It is a mentally exhausting machine to run. So Danielle, 10,000 hours in a skid steer and excavator with grapple. That's good. That's really good to have that seat time and that experience. Just make sure you don't hit the job site thinking that you know everything, just because those are two relatively limited pieces of equipment. I'm assuming if you were running an excavator with a grapple, you were either doing some sort of demolition work or you were working in a scrapyard or something like that. That's really not going to carry over to regular job site conditions. So don't want to downplay your experience whatsoever. Just make sure you kind of keep yourself in check. It's really easy to get on a job site and come off as being a little cocky, and then what happens is people start getting irritated with you. So, but don't write off the school option. My stance has always been, it will always continue to be, if you can get paid to learn on the job, that's the better avenue to go down. But if you want to go the school route, by all means, don't let us shoot you down. Just do your due diligence to make sure the school is worth your money. I will say that, because there are a lot of schools that you get, 15 hours of seat time, and I can tell you right now, 15 hours of seat time is not worth paying for. And without seat time is everything in this industry. Without seat time, it's not even worth paying for. So make sure you get seat time. Yeah. Now we're getting down to the comments when I was off peeing. I'm sorry, guys. Come on, Matt. Cut me some slack. I'm only human here. For all you guys know, I could be sitting on a bucket here. So think about that. Oh, eat the homeless. Dude, you should have told me. I didn't realize that's who I was talking to here. It's Brandon, right? You should have told me this was Brandon. Was it Brandon? God dang it. I forgot your name, and I'm sorry. So I'm glad to hear you didn't jump at the fiber job just because they fluffed you up a little bit. So that does make me happy to hear. But that being said, like we talked about on the phone, man, just go pound the pavement. I guarantee you can find something that's going to pay you better and do you good. So Dozer Dennis, what's happening? Thanks for joining in. I know I'm sorry I'm late on the comments here. Hey, we got Frank in here. What's happening, Frank? Thanks for coming out. eFix, thank you. I've seen you multiple times. And yes, you did remember the show. Good for you, buddy. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Let's see here. Ryan, head-to-head battle. Dude, I'm telling you, Frank is on, like, if it wasn't for how far away distance-wise he is, Frank is like my number one person to go see right now. So, and believe me, I've got a whole video planned for it. It's going to be like an old, in my mind, I've already got the way I'm going to film it and the way I'm going to color grade it. It's going to look like an old Western, and we're going to have to be back to back in our machines, and we're going to have the gunslinger music playing. I mean, I've got to figure out now. The one thing I don't have covered is I've got to figure out how to get a tumbleweed to go through as we're sitting in our machines back to back. I haven't worked out that one quite yet, but yeah, Frank is one of my top guys to go see because I think we could have some fun with that one. So it is Brandon. Okay. See, I do remember some names from time to time. So Brandon, when it comes to those graders, it depends on which style you go for. If you're the piano keys, then you've got your fingers. You can pretty much cover the spread. Or if you've got the two handles, obviously you don't need to be an octopus because it's all your fingers for the most part. So it just depends on what you're running. So Paris, going back to your question, most diverse, high-paying jobs outside of a traditional construction site. So if you were going to go that route, I would say if you were to get into specialty hoisting applications, doing wind farm work, refinery work, and that's even on the dirt side too. If you do refinery work, that's typically going to pay really well. Maritime work, marine work is going to pay really well. I'm trying to think of any other specialty. I don't know. You guys help me out in the comments. Can you think of any other specialty jobs that pay really, really well? I would think those the specialty demo companies would pay well, but I could be totally wrong on that one. Aaron, yes. Time on the ground with a good operator is the most valuable experience you can get. It's just a ton of seat time. Thousands of hours of seat time. And Peyton, yeah, you nailed it with the grader. It is hundreds of hours a week just doing this, like staring down at a crawl and just getting super fine movements with your fingers, and you're sweating because if you move your blade too far this way, you're going to catch a manhole and catch, take it, you're going to take the catch basin cover off of the actual structure. If you go this way too far, you could screw up your curb line or rub up against something you're going to, regret. And then you've got to do an articulated turn as you're going around this catch basin so you don't catch your curb over. Like, that's what a grader is, and that's why no one really goes and pursues the grader unless they really want to pursue the grader. Don't get me wrong, if you love technical operating, there's nothing better than a grader, but it is, oh my gosh, it is some seriously high concentration stuff. So, let's see here. Sketchers, you're there in, don't tell me. Where's Dan's out of? Oh my gosh, I totally had a brain fart. You're right there where Dan's is. God. This is gonna irritate me. Shelby Township, right? Shelby Township. Yeah, you're right down the road. You're like, what, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, somewhere in there? All right, Nick, thanks for hanging out, brother. I hope I didn't already miss you. I'm sorry if I did. I'm slowly getting caught up in the comments here. The Rochester lights. No, I did not do the Rochester lights. No, I did not. I don't have a more in-depth answer for you other than no, I did not. I'm sorry. Yeah, fire. That's pretty accurate. The grader is an intimidating machine to get into. Like, anyone who steps foot in a grader for the first time, it's super intimidating until you figure out that half of your controls are actually just duplicates of whatever's on the left side. So, your blade pitch and angle and all that stuff. But it's also one of those things like any other piece of equipment. Once you spend a week or two in that machine, you stop thinking about what handle you've got to pull and what knob you got to turn, and it just becomes you're thinking about what you need the machine to do, and then you just make it happen. You kind of become one with that machine. But yeah, for the first time stepping up in there, like the number of switches, because what most people just look at is your piano keys up there. But no one looks at the switch, and all of the toggles that are switching over, like pulling the pin for your saddle and stuff like that. Like, there's so many other things that go into it. You've got float switches for both sides of the blade. I'm trying to think of what else. Like, there's just so much stuff in a grader. It can be very overwhelming when you first get in one. Joe, quick question. Do you think it's worth it to go to an equipment school? So, this is one that I'll get asked 5 or 6 times every live stream, and I'm totally okay with that. If you can get paid to learn on the job, go get paid to learn on the job instead of spending your hard-earned money to go have someone teach you, sort of. My problem with tech schools right now and trade schools is they teach you how to pull sticks in a machine. They don't teach you how to put storm pipe in the ground or how to install a water main or how to tap a water main. Like that, none of the actual skills get taught other than how to pull the levers. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but with a couple hours of YouTube videos watched and 2 days with a little rental mini excavator, you can be pretty much where you're at coming out of a heavy equipment school. But how much did you pay to get that education? Yeah, you may have a little more technical knowledge, but not a whole lot. So I always encourage people, go see if you can find a job and get paid to learn as opposed to paying for school. But if you are going to do the school thing, just make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure you get a fair amount of seat time so that it's worth your money. Because without seat time, there is no point in going to school. The way you learn this equipment is by sitting in the seat, not sitting in a classroom. So that's what I'll say to that. Yeah, Wraith, that was the way I did. So we had, while I was working at the case dealership, we had a grader come in, and it was there for I think 4 weeks. And so I came in every Saturday and I would just grade the parking lot. And that's kind of where I was at. Like, I'm not a grader operator. I could keep it flat. I could, I could roll the material and come fill it back in and manipulate it a little bit, but I am not a grader operator. That takes, I would say operating a grader for 6 months and you're still not going to be an expert. You'll be pretty proficient, but still, you got a lot to learn. Oh, so there you go, Frank. You got tumbleweeds down there. The thing I haven't figured out is how to get that tumbleweed to tumble at exactly the right moment through the frame of my shot while we're back to back in our machines. We'll have to rig it up with some wire or something. But after watching the way you work on machines and the stuff you're able to rig up, I'm confident between the two of us we will figure out a way to get that tumbleweed to play its part. Yeah, Ryan, I will say this. In the time that I spent grading the parking lot in that grader, I was in it for probably 4 hours each time I was in it, and I came away mentally exhausted, even though I was just grading a flat parking lot. I can't imagine the guys that do that all day long up against curb lines and catch basins and all of the other obstacles they got to avoid. I bet they sleep good. That's all I can say. I bet they sleep really good. Cox Landscaping, thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming out. Yeah, so that's another good point, Frank. If you can manage to get in with one of the counties and get into a grader, that's the advantage there is, for the most part, you're not getting super technical. Like, you're generally grading back county roads. You're carrying a 1 to 2% slope off each side of the road. You roll the material into the middle and then you just grade it back out at the correct slope. But that being said, you can see where on some of those back roads, if you wanted to experiment and play, like, you'd have the time to do that and really get seat time and start to hone it a little bit. But man, those guys on those road jobs, it's a whole different animal. Paris, like, I feel like we're slowly narrowing it down to where I'm just going to tell you to get into a skid steer. Like, outside of grader and crane, the next best machine to specialize in. I mean, hoe operators, if you're a good hoe operator, every job has hoes. And you need a good hoe operator, a good mainline hoe operator. That would be a way to specialize. I will say confidently, if you can get good at running a loader and handling the heavy workload that goes along with running for a pipe crew, once you get discovered that you can run proficiently for a pipe crew, you actually become very marketable, because not many people can. It's like I've said before earlier in the live stream, it's not the being able to make a loader go forward and backwards and pick up pipe. It's being able to handle your phone ringing every 2 to 5 minutes with 3 guys needing different things, having to go down here and tell a truck where to drop the pipe off and unload him, while also coordinating with your gravel train that just showed up with all your P-stone or your 6A, telling him where to dump. But then you're also having to think 3 structures ahead of where your hoe's sitting, and you need to lay those out. And then you also need to keep your hoe fed with backfill stone. And then at the same time, you've got to also string out some pipe for them, but they're coming up to their next structure, so you got to make sure they've got all the stuff they need to put that structure in. So you're going to have to go back to the last structure and pick up the chains and bring them forward. Like, there's so many things that are happening in that cab at any given time, and you have to be able, like, you are in charge of your time management in that machine. So no one's coordinating you and saying, hey, you need to prioritize this, and then you need to prioritize this, and then you need to prioritize this. You're responsible for all of that. And if you can do that, you're actually really in demand, because not a lot of people can do that. So go run a loader for a pipe crew. Aaron, that's a great point, and I've said that in videos too. I 100% recognize that the majority of the industry does not wear their seatbelt. I'm not going to claim to be better than anybody else. I also, a lot of times, don't wear my seatbelt in a controlled environment. Yes, there's always the chance for an accident, obviously. But, you know, I'm a terrible person and I don't do it. That being said, when I get in any new piece of equipment that I do not know, it has always been my practice to buckle the seatbelt. If I'm ever in a situation where it could even be a little dicey, I am buckling my seatbelt. Slope work, I buckle my seatbelt. So yes, for new operators especially, because you're not familiar with how the machines run, with how they're going to act in different situations and in different materials, absolutely buckle your seatbelt. That's a great tip. Great Lakes Construction, right around Cincinnati. No, the name sounded familiar for a second, but no, I don't think I have. Especially if they were in the Cincinnati area. That's far enough south that they probably wouldn't make it up our way. Do you have any idea where they're out of? That might help me out. Starting a new excavating company in Kalamazoo at the end of the month. That's awesome, Elliot. Congratulations on starting the new company. That's really exciting. That's really exciting. And thanks for watching the videos, man. And yes, I would absolutely be interested in sharing some cold ones. In fact, contact me when you start getting some work. Kalamazoo is not that far away. I would absolutely come hang out for a day or two with you and operate alongside you, as long as you're willing to let me record and make some videos off of it. Frank, 100%. So I want everyone to listen, because Frank, as we all know, and if you don't know, go look at his go watch Digging Oklahoma. He's got a fantastic channel. He has absolute mastery of his machine. He just made a fantastic point. One of the first things you should do, maybe you don't have time the second you set foot in the machine, but the first second you get some downtime, read through the manual on that machine and figure out what all of the buttons and switches do. It is absolutely imperative when you get into that machine to set it up to run at its optimum performance. And that may change depending on the circumstances you're in, or, you know, traction control on loaders is a great example. If you think turning traction control off benefits you in the machine, you're totally wrong. Likewise, if you think turning traction control on and leaving it in the same setting all the time benefits you, you're totally wrong. You need to learn the manual and figure out how those options play in to figure out what those buttons do to set it up for optimal performance in your digging conditions. So that's a great point, Frank. Thank you for bringing that up. It is absolutely, read the freaking manual. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You're not dumb for pulling out the manual on a machine. That's one of the first things I do when I get in a new piece of equipment, especially if there's a couple buttons or a couple menu items that I don't know what they do exactly. I 100% dig into the manual. So yeah, fire, that's another great point. I don't know why I didn't mention that one. Yeah, if you can finish grade in a dozer, that is another very high demand person on any job site, because anyone can jump in a dozer and hog material. I could put you in any dozer, and by the end of the day, you'd be able to hog material. It's going to look like absolute garbage. You could probably use it as a motocross track, but by God, you've moved some dirt. To be able to finish grade and do it at high speed, efficiently, and put out production, like, that's a whole different animal. And there's a lot of people, as we all know, I won't beat around the bush here, but as we all know in this industry, there are a lot of people that claim to be able to finish grade, don't have a clue how to finish grade in a dozer. So if you can figure that out, that is another highly marketable skill. So yeah, fire, 100%. He is the maestro of backhoes, even though I hate backhoes and I give him crap for it all the time. Yes, Ryan, that is a perfect summary of Frank. And I know, Frank, we're all dogging on you. I'm sorry, man, but I just can't stand backhoes. Brandon, so they are from Michigan. Let's see who this is. Great Lakes Construction. Let me look them up really quick. Great Lakes Construction. Oh, they're out of Plymouth. I may have seen these guys around. Nope, that's Great Lakes Way. That's Oh, this is saying that they are well, I know this shouldn't actually be a shock, but they're actually multiple Great Lakes construction companies because we're right next to the Great Lakes. But this one claims to be, and this one looks like it might be the one you're talking about because it's heavy civil, but they're actually based out of Ohio. So I'm not super familiar with these guys. I don't think I have seen them up in this area, so they may try to stay further south. Yeah, so. See, and I've talked about this before. Part of the reason I dog on backhoes, kind of going back to Ryan here, the reason I dog on backhoes so hard is because I spent half a season in one driving up and down an 11-mile long job, bouncing my ass all over the road. And then it was always we were doing erosion control, so I was always in some weird ditch at a funky angle where the backhoe just didn't get good traction or I couldn't get good reach. And then you're constantly got the backhoe arming your way and you can't see around it. And I was using wobble sticks. I hate wobble sticks, the two sticks, as opposed to having pilot controls. So like everything about that year was working against me. So I really developed a seething, loathing relationship with a backhoe, and I've had a hard time getting past it. If you couldn't tell, it emotionally damaged me, and now I just can't look at a backhoe with kind eyes anymore. So that's my backhoe story. Oh. H&K Excavating. Elliot, that sounds super familiar. Where are you guys? I'm assuming that's out of Kalamazoo too? H&K Construction. Boy, that sounds familiar. Out of Schoolcraft? Which, by the way, if you're familiar with L&L Milling down there in Schoolcraft, not L&L, I'm sorry. Jerry Shuring. What company was his called? Dadgummit. Now I can't think of his name. Man, what was his company name? Milling Schoolcraft. JL Milling. Jeez, I don't know why that was so hard. If you know JL Milling down there in Schoolcraft, he was one of my customers when I sold equipment. Super nice guy. I'm gonna try to get in with him at some point here and get some good pulverizing footage and milling footage. Hey Paris, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it, and yeah, looking forward to seeing you on the next one, man. Let's see here. Yeah, that's another good point, Frank. Those manuals also have some really good tips that you might not think about. I tell you, one area in particular where it could do you well is reading lift charts in excavators, because what you'll find is there are sweet spots on those excavators of where they can pick the most weight, and they're generally in the middle, but not where you would think they would be, because it depends on the geometry of the boom and the stick. So that's another great thing to look over when you get in a machine, especially if you're doing any sort of craning, is take a look at that lift chart and figure out where your sweet spot is for lifting. Yeah, Brandon, like I said, looking them up, it looks like that company's actually based out of Ohio, because all of the ones that I saw up here in Michigan look like they were smaller companies, but if they were doing bridge work, that's probably that bigger civil company. Oh, but Elliot's familiar with two here in Michigan, so I don't know. These are two companies I'm not familiar with, so I'm not sure exactly. So Frank, here is a good question for you. What made you say you hated them for a couple minutes, what made you decide to stick it out with the backhoe as opposed to going with another piece of equipment? Because I continue, this is just me, I continue to look at all of your footer videos and just think how much quicker it could potentially be running with like a 5-ton machine. with a bucket on it, it'd be a small footprint. You've still got the reach that you do with the backhoe. You've got the lifting capacity somewhat reasonably close to the backhoe. I don't know. I'm curious what made you stick with the backhoe so much. Aaron, yeah, the 4-stick 580, those are actually called foot swing controls. And here's just a nifty little tidbit for you. When we would order a backhoe from the factory, to this day, case still comes, a case 580 backhoe still comes standard from the factory with foot swing controls. It is an option in the price book that we pick, and we do it for every backhoe because unless someone special orders a foot swing, no one wants foot swing anymore. But as kind of an homage to the old days, it is still standard to come with foot swing controls, and we have to pick the option out of the price book to convert that over to either a wobble stick machine or over to a pilot control machine. So, and there are still guys, it is funny, there are still a handful of guys that will not operate anything other than the foot swing controls. And so we would, I don't know, probably once every couple of months get a brand new 580 in, shiny from the factory, that still had the 4 sticks in the back, and it always made me laugh when I saw it. But it was cool too to see it. Yeah, see, I think Elliot, I think I've seen H&K around. That name really rings a bell. And yeah, Ryan, I'm with you. So that was always my big problem with the backhoes I ran, is they had the big old long wobble sticks, and I never felt like I could get accurate with them. There was just way too much stroke in those controls. Anytime, and I talked about this in one of my vlogs where I was running an excavator, like to be able to run with my fingers, you have a lot more control. And if you watch any good operator, Frank does it, I've noticed, my buddy Rick does it. I'm trying to think of who else that I've watched that you can see their hands on the controls, but you notice all of your good operators. He's not in here tonight, but and I just lost the name of his channel. Oh God, never mind. I'm not even gonna try because I can't think of it. All of your good operators run with their fingertips, and the reason is because you have so much feel in your fingertips. But the second you have to use your arms, you don't have that control and that finesse. And that's why I hated the twin stick wobble sticks, is because there is no fingertip movement. Like, you're using your full arm to move those sticks around, and you just can't finesse those machines. I can't stand them. So yeah, so fire, that's a great point too. Like, skid steers are one that's kind of along the lines with loaders. Like, if you've ever gotten into a cat loader, the first time I got in a cat loader, I looked over and I was like, what in the hell are all these buttons for? You're talking a boom and a bucket. What on earth could all these buttons be for? And skid steers are the same way. Like, you'd have no idea the amount of customization, customability, whatever the word is there, that you have in these machines. And you do need to change some of those parameters depending on your working conditions. So yeah, reading the manual, I can't stress that enough. I really should have said that in that loader video that I made. I'll have to redo or do another video along those lines at some point in time, just because that is such a critical thing to go read that manual. So Brandon, it depends on what I would say it depends on two things. One is the kind of work you're going to be doing, and two is what is your mode of transportation. So if you are trying to pull this thing around with a triaxle dump truck and a triaxle trailer, I would say get you a little like 160 class excavator, and then try to couple that with like a D3 or a D5 size dozer. If you're wanting one machine, yeah, you might step it down to a smaller hoe that's got a blade on the front of it. Although they work well, but you're going to be relatively limited in your grading abilities. So I would probably try to couple that with a skid. But if you step up and you've got a low boy that you can carry things around, and you're starting to do bigger projects, then I would probably step up to like a 210 size machine, just because it's still small enough you can get it in a lot of tight spots, but you are starting to get in a little more productive size machine there. So it really, there's a lot of factors that go into that one. That's a hard one to answer. So I'm curious, Frank, you say that the excavator can't produce footings as nice. I'm curious what makes you say that, because in my experience, I always felt like you could get the cleaner hole because of the maneuverability of the excavator. But that's me. I'm curious why that is. Do you think it's a lack of seat time on your part, or do you think it genuinely just does a better job? And I'm not being an ass. That's a genuine question. I am curious. Oh yeah, Aaron, so that is yeah. So backhoes, that is one area with backhoes you do have to be super careful of, and a lot of guys get very complacent of is being in that swing radius of the backhoe. And that is one thing that we actually had come in relatively frequently, is guys don't realize there is a linkage that goes from those foot swings into the actual valves, and there is a grease zerk on those fittings, or on those linkages, and they don't grease them, and they do get sticky over time. So yeah, 100% you do have to pay attention to those. And Ryan, 100%, yes, Chris over there at Let's Dig only uses his fingers. If you watch, all of your good operators use their fingers instead of having their whole freaking hand around it. And it's because you can be so much accurate. Nathan, what's happening, man? Thanks for joining the chat here. Foot and hand coordination. So Fire, that's funny that you say that. I didn't realize link belt controls were a weird smattering. But link belt controls on an excavator are goofy. So I want to say on your left hand, forward and backward is actually your swing. I don't even remember what the rest of the controls are, because they blew my mind when this guy was telling me what they were. There's still guys that run the old link belt controls. And then they wonder why they can't find anyone to work at the company. Like, that was one of our discussions, is the owner didn't want to convert his controls over, but they couldn't find anyone to operate their machines, because as soon as they found out they used link belt controls, no one could run the machine. So yeah, so Brandon, going back to your question, yeah, so an ideal setup in my mind would be get like a 750 or 850 dozer, couple that with like a Case 160 equivalent sized excavator, and now you have two pieces of equipment you can run all over the place with a triaxle trailer behind a dump truck. You won't have any issues getting in anywhere. It's small enough. It's a small enough footprint that you can get 90% of your stuff done, but it's also a substantial enough machine, both on the dozer and the excavator's part, that you can move a lot of material with that size machine. So if I was going to go out and start something tomorrow, that would be my setup, is a dozer about that size, an excavator about that size, and I would probably get a CTL to go with them to get into my smaller jobs, and that would be my full setup. So, and Elliot brings up a good point. If you do step down the next size, you can still be pretty productive with like a mid-size excavator. So like even stepping down to like a CX80 size, you can be super productive with those. And now you're to the point where you can get a gooseneck trailer and haul it around with like a dually pickup. And then you could couple that with like a large CTL, and you could probably do pretty well. Yeah, Frank swears that the Mini X can't hold a candle to the backhoe. We're gonna have to have that dig off at one point in time. Yeah, Rick, I didn't realize you were still in here, man. Yeah, the CX80. So I would actually, I'm gonna put a little caveat in there. Go with the Kobelco SK85 because it's a better machine in my opinion. It's got a little more power, and I don't know if you guys saw my videos from last summer, but that CX80 has got some goofy, like weird, I don't know, the finals, whenever you're catting and trying to do other hydraulic functions, the finals just turn to crap, and it's really jerky and it's really hard to control. And the Kobelco didn't tend to do that, and Kobelco puts out a really, really nice machine. But yeah, stepping down to that size, even, like, that's a really capable machine. It's got a really good lift capacity. It's got a really good reach. You can throw a 36-inch bucket and hog material with that machine, and it's small enough you can get it on a gooseneck behind a dually pickup, and carry that thing all over the place. And like I said, you can couple that with one of your larger CTLs, and that will pretty much move most of the material the CX80 is going to be able to pull out, or the SK85. So it just depends on your application, I would say. Oh, link belt controls. Left hand is push and pull is swing. Yes. Left hand and right is bucket. Right push pull is boom. Yeah, so link belt controls just blow my mind. Those are I don't know why anyone came up with them. I don't even know why they're still around, because no one uses them, other than that was the only person I've ever heard of that's used them. Yeah, so Fire's familiar with those controls, but yeah, they're old school for sure. Which, by the way, guys, it's 10:07. Let's try to wrap this up in the next. Let's try to wrap it up by 10:15. So that gives us about 7 minutes more. 8, because I'm good at math. So 8 minutes. We're gonna wrap this baby up. So, I see this battle going back and forth between Frank and others in here. This is one of the beautiful parts. This is one of the great parts of the excavating industry, is there's no one right way to do something. It's really the operator using the tool that he prefers at his disposal to get the job done. Kind of going back to that, is it faster with a track loader or an excavator to dig a basement? We sit here and speculate all night long that the excavator is going to be faster, but I guarantee you somewhere out there is a track loader operator that would probably about give me a run for my money in an excavator digging a basement. So that is the beauty of this industry, is there's multiple ways to skin a cat, and none of them are necessarily the right way. Yet we will sit here and bicker in a chat about one of them being the right way. So that's the beauty of the industry. We all know how to fight with each other. Yeah, we're gonna do it, Frank. At some point in time here, I don't know if I'm gonna try to make it happen sometime this summer. But at some point I'm going to come down there. We will rent a Mini, and we will have a full-blown dig off, and I will make a freaking sweet video off of it too. It's gonna be awesome. Eduardo, it is optional. You can put it's just like an excavator. You can put a quick coupler on a backhoe, and you can do it with a quick coupler and operate the quick coupler. And this is something I didn't realize until I started selling equipment. Like, even within quick couplers, you can have manual quick couplers, you can have hydraulic quick couplers, you can have pin grabber quick couplers, you can have like a semi-manual little pull little pin quick couplers. Like, there's so many freaking quick couplers. But all that to say, it is totally on what you are willing to pay for as to what kind of quick coupler you have. So, yes, they can have them. Kobelco 140s, yeah, that's a good size little machine. Is that I'm assuming those are the zero swing machines, but I don't remember for sure. But yeah, that size class, so what's really interesting is that size class, if it is the zero swing machines, they actually have more lifting capacity than the next size up excavator. And it's because of the geometry going on with the machine. So I think I've talked about this in another live stream, but in a regular excavator, the boom comes off of the very front of the body, and so it's moved forward. On those zero swing machines, you'll notice that the boom arm is almost centered in the machine, and so it doesn't need as much counterweight to get the lift capacity because that lifting part is in the center of the machine. So they have crazy lifting capacity, even though they have a lighter counterweight than the next size up. So just another interesting tidbit for you. This is the stuff I nerd out on, so I think it's cool. You were a case dealer. My first skid steer I ever ran was 1840, man. Those 1840s, we almost weekly had people coming in asking if we knew anyone that had an 1840 that was still in good condition. And there are so many of them out there. They were just tanks. They ran forever. They were fully mechanical. So if you had, it wasn't like nowadays where you have to worry about high pressure common rail fuel systems and you have to worry about emissions and computers. Like if something went wrong with the 1840, you'd take a wrench and a hammer to the back of the machine and you'd start turning stuff and you could get it to work again. So those were fantastic little skid steers, and they still run like champs. So I'm very familiar with the 1840. Any case salesman is very familiar with the 1840s. Oh, I see what's going on, Fire. So you're gonna take Frank's side. Okay, all right. So we can start taking sides, and we can set up some betting, brackets on this, and we can do the dig off. John Deere controls in an excavator. At the end of the day, Ryan, John Deere controls versus cat controls, or ISO versus whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't materially impact the performance of the machine. It's literally, you have a valve that just flips which controls it goes to. So there is literally no difference in performance when it comes to control patterns. So now that being said, what I've talked about, Carson over at Shifsky over there in Minneapolis, I'm going to go see him again probably sometime in the early summer here. And he uses Deere controls. I use cat controls. And so we've actually talked about, if I can make it back out there, we're going to do a dig off where we use each other's patterns. So he has to use cat controls, I have to use Deere controls, and we'll have to dig, I don't know, like a 30-foot long run, 4 foot deep or whatever, and we're going to record ourselves looking like idiots using the other one's pattern. So that should make a good video. Elliot, thanks for hanging out. I hope I didn't miss you already, but thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next one, man. Dude, Ryan, if you haven't been liking all of Frank's videos, you need to go do that and watch the man run the machine. Because I don't care how you feel about backhoes, watching him run that backhoe will make you genuinely like watching the backhoe. You won't want to run the backhoe, but you will enjoy watching him run the backhoe. Aaron, thanks for having my back on being an equipment nerd. I'm all about it, man. That's the stuff that gets me. Like when you start talking about the swing cycles on excavators and how you can line up your truck stack to make it more efficient, like that's where I'm like, oh, yes, keep going. Like that's just that. I enjoy the nerd out, man. So I'm glad you've got my back on that one. Yeah, AP, you guys have no room over there. That's why everyone likes a zero swing. You've got like 2 houses that are 4 feet apart, and you're supposed to put like a 140, size excavator through them. And you guys have some transformer like fold up into a tiny box excavator that makes its way through there. And then it unfolds, and it's got the Swiss Army knife of attachments on the end of it. And you've got 14,000 buttons on your joystick to make them all work. Yeah, you Europeans are a whole different breed over there. All right, Frank, thanks for hanging out, man. Appreciate it. Wraith. Look, listen to Brian. I'm sorry, the name was Brian. Brian's flying in here saying any good operator can run ISO and SAE. I'm telling you right now, you're gonna look retarded for a while if you switch the pattern mid-swing. Like anyone, once your brain clicks over, it takes you a while to click it back. So we'll see. Yeah, and Ryan, 100%, it pisses you off more than anything because your brain is just programmed. Like, you don't think about what you're doing. You just know your machine needs to do this, and to have to stop and think again, it makes you angry. It makes you so angry. So, all right, guys, we're wrapping it up. It's 10:15. That's it. So, thanks for hanging out. As always, it's been a pleasure. You guys have a great week, and stay posted. I will post something on whether or not we're going to do a live next week, depending on where I'm at. I'm hoping that I'll be able to do a live from the road via the cell phone. I just won't have all this fanciness going on. It's just going to be me on my cell phone. But you guys have a great week. I will leave this up as always so you guys can chat for a little bit after I get off the camera. But you guys have a great week, and we'll catch you guys on the next live stream.